It's time for MacBreak Weekly. Well, in the aftermath of Apple's announcement, and Microsoft's too, because I think there's something to say about that, we've got a really good panel for you. From tidbits.com, Adam Engst joins Andy Ihnatko, Alex Lindsay, and Rene Ritchie. A giant MacBreak Weekly is next.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for MacBreak Weekly is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is MacBreak Weekly, episode 531, recorded Tuesday, November 1st, 2016. A land of ghosts and winds. MacBreak Weekly is brought to you by the Ring Video Doorbell. With Ring, you can see and talk to anyone at your door from anywhere in the world using your smartphone. It's like caller ID for your house. Go to ring.com/MacBreak and get up to $150 off a Ring of Security kit with their limited time offer. And by Squarespace. Squarespace is the simplest way to create a beautiful website. Plus, with a developer platform, you can customize the code behind any Squarespace design. Enter the offer code MacBreak to get 10% off. And by Tracker, a coin-sized tracking device that pairs with your smartphone and keeps you from losing your most valued possessions. Visit thetracker.com right now and enter the promo code MacBreak to receive a free Tracker Bravo with any purchase. It's time for MacBreak Weekly, the show where we cover the latest news from Apple. There's lots of news from Apple, and I assembled a massive panel today because we're going to have, I'm hoping, a massive discussion. Andy Ihnatko is here, as usual, from the Chicago Sun-Times. It's a pleasure having you here, Andy.
A pleasure to be here.
Looking very sharp today. And
yes, I've had lots of leftover Halloween candy.
That will sharpen
lunch
one's...
for the peanut butter sandwich and 8 mini Snickers bars. So I'll be really excited for the first hour, then it'll be kind of a crash around hour 2. Yeah. So make the most of it while you can.
Also here, Rene Ritchie from Montreal. You're back in town. You flew back, I guess.
Yes, I was supposed to fly out again, but I had some last-minute plans change, so I'm happy I could be here.
Oh, good. Where were you going this time?
I was going to Ireland for Ool, but then I had a few last-minute things I couldn't miss, and so I had to rearrange those plans. And I'm devastated I'm not there. Yeah.
Are you going to miss Ool?
I am, unfortunately. I know. Sadness. A lot of Guinness sadness.
We were talking about that the other day, how the loss of Macworld Expo has actually spawned a wonderful bunch of eclectic Mac conferences like Ool. Like, what's the one in Yosemite you go to, Andy?
The Yosemite Conference.
Oh, yeah.
CocoCon Yosemite.
CocoCon, yeah.
Coco Love, Singleton for a while. There's
Alex
C4 back in the day.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, hey, that's Adam Engst. He's a legend in the Mac business. He's been doing it forever. Tidbits.com is the oldest Mac newsletter and the best. It's great to have you, Adam.
Always great to be here.
And your massive penguin collection.
Absolutely.
Also with us, and it's howdy stranger time. Alex Lindsay back in the fold. You've been busy, obviously,
hello.
Alex.
Yeah. The election season is oftentimes a busy time for us. So
election season. Why is that?
Yeah, there's people who want to stream things and talk about things. And
your Canadian elections are over.
Sorry?
Trudeau won. Didn't you hear?
Yeah, the Canadian elections are over, Alex.
Do you get... I'm wondering, with the advent of Facebook Live and all these ways, it's not so hard to do it yourself. I bet that's actually good for your business because people do that and then they go, oh, how do we make this more pro?
Yeah, the problem with all of these is the simple procedure, whether it's Facebook Live or Hangouts or whatever, is a fairly it's a simple procedure on the surface. But once you want to start making it really work and scale it, it becomes more complicated. It's easy to have a barbecue with your friends, and if people don't show up on time, and
Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah.
Now you probably have the inside story on that. So we watched a couple of Sundays ago. Mark invited a few friends.
I don't know anything about that.
You don't. And if you did, you couldn't say. I know. He invited a few friends over to his backyard and streamed it in 20 or 30 or 40. Then it was 50, 60,000 people simultaneously watching. But you got the back end of Facebook, so. No challenge, really, probably.
Well, and even there, I think he had some issues in the first round of it, using his own Wi-Fi or whatever, and those are the kind of things that what we get paid to do is solve that problem. Is to make sure that it might be a simple Facebook Live, but we might be using a cellular or a satellite or fiber backup or all of those.
If you're running for Congress, it really doesn't reflect well on you if you do kind of a cheesy job. It needs to be super pro.
Well, and again, for brands or most of our clients are Fortune 50, and so they're for a brand to go down. I mean, you look at what some of the challenges some brands have had with some of their streams, and that failure is the most expensive thing. So you start off with these things that seem like Facebook Live would be really fun, and you start doing it on your phone, and I've done a bunch of fun little Facebook Lives on my phone, but once you really get serious, you then start adding a lot of hardware. I want to start using multiple cameras, and I want to start getting feedback, and I want to have it open, and I want to play a movie in the middle of it, and I want to, all the things that people start thinking about once they start doing any kind of video production. And so those are the kind of things that we, and then I also want a primary and a backup to that, and that type of thing. Those are the things that we tend to solve. So that's what keeps us busy on these things.
Yeah.
Well, Apple's event went off without a hitch. They had an event Thursday. Microsoft, same thing. Both companies now have gotten very good at streaming their conferences, and
Yeah, I don't know. We had some actually relatively significant streaming problems here.
But that's local
TV
to
app.
you. I don't think we had problems.
Could be. I mean, our Apple TV app blew out. I mean, it was distinctly problems, that were being reported to us.
Oh, okay.
So
other people see problems because
our Slack group, the tidbits readers in Slack also had, a number of people were saying, "Oh, I lost the stream. Oh, you're a minute ahead of me." That kind of stuff.
I'm defensive over that because a lot of people blame us for that, right? and more often than not, it's the end user's situation that causes problems.
Oh, and that happens all the time. I mean, it takes two to tango. So you can't.
Yeah, what I always tell people is if other people aren't reporting the problem, it's you.
Yes. Right. Yeah, and also, looking at, oftentimes we have to look at geographic regions. So
it could be regional because of Akamai and
there could be an area, an ISP. There could be a variety of things that are. So if we see only the Northwest region or only California, that tends to not be typically a CDN particular problem, but it might be somewhere on the edge.
I was in Gainesville, Florida, watching on a 4G or LTE stream. And it was rock solid. But Adam, you're where are you? New England?
Upstate New York.
Upstate New York, that's right.
I have about 30 megabits down from Time Warner, and usually it's pretty solid, but you never know. And just with all the denial of service attacks we've had recently, I've been using the down for everyone or just me site a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you never know.
Yeah. Well, I'm stalling because I know we're going to get into a kind of a conversation in a moment. And I'm kind of putting it off, but we'll get to it. But I guess otherwise we're going to bury every other story underneath it. The Apple on Tuesday, Apple did its earnings, and it was right after the show. We had to let Rene run to file, and you listened, I presume, Rene, to the analyst call.
Yes, the car is the new Apple, is a new television.
Is that what he said?
No, but that's what Munster's asking about now, so you got to figure.
Yeah. Munster knows something.
Dead.
Wasn't it Munster who said it was going to be TV?
Yes, that's what I mean. Like he's got something new in his jaw now.
Yeah, and then now it says, it's going to be cars. And then he says, no, it's not going to be cars. It was Apple's first annual revenue decline in 15 years. So that's not insignificant.
But it was still the second highest Q4 profit ever.
Interesting. So revenue is the amount of money you make before you factor in the costs of everything. It's the total cash coming in over the transom. And profit, of course, is what you get to keep.
Right. And as more what I was pointing out is that 2016 was down from 2015, but it was up from 2014 and everything before then. So still $9 billion.
So it's not and I should clarify. It sounds like when you read the headline, its revenue is the worst since 2001. No. It's just that since 2001 it's been going up every single year. And so going down year over year from 2015 to 2016, and by the way, not by a whole lot, Less than 10%.
And that's also the introduction of the iPod was 2001 and the iPhone 2007, and that's a heck of a revenue engine.
Right. Is it down? iPhone sales that was? Remember that only a couple of weeks of iPhone 7 sales are factored in here.
And Apple, honestly, I don't quite know what's going on here because they said that they were shipping every iPhone they can make. And I know a number of people who did not, order right away. They thought, they'd think about it for a week or two. And now they're waiting until December to get an iPhone 7 or 7 Plus. So Apple is shipping everything they can make. And yet, I don't know what those initial sales were like because they said it didn't make a huge difference in the quarterly results.
Yeah, they couldn't fulfill. They were totally supply constrained. And that was one of the big questions on the conversation is that when Apple had new markets to enter, when they could go to Verizon, when they could go international, when they could go to China Mobile, they could sort of forecast demand for iPhone. But since then, since they've filled all the carrier channels, they didn't expect as many people would buy the iPhone SE as they did. They thought more people would buy the iPhone 6 Plus than did. They didn't think as many people would want the iPhone 7 Plus as did, and sort of put their modern demand forecasting into doubt.
Also saturated the market to some extent, right? I mean, there's a point beyond which you can't. There's no.
That's why Elon's going to Mars, Leo. We need Apple stores on Mars. Open up new markets.
Yeah, well, and I don't think they calculated that Samsung would make a phone that was flammable.
But that you're going to see next quarter. That's when you're going to see that is in the Q1 results.
It depends if you can ramp up. I mean, that's an awful lot of phone voids to fill. And I think that's the same problem the Google Pixel will have is a lot of people would love to buy. Google probably love to make as many.
They're having that problem. They're actually giving people $50 credits now because they are not able to get the Pixel to people as promised and the date promised, which is something Apple hasn't happened to Apple yet. They always at least stand by their delivery date.
It's hard to add millions of units to your manufacturing schedule.
I saw one estimate that half of Note 7 users who were returning their Note 7 ended up buying an iPhone 7 instead. So it clearly is going to benefit them, but I don't think those numbers will show up.
Well, and I think the hard thing for Samsung is that once someone goes down into the ecosystem, it's going to be hard to back out again. Yeah, and that's it's not something they're going to lose. They might have had some certain loss that they're going to realize over this quarter, but they're going to lose a lot more over the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. So, and it's also a series of unusual events that gave it continued revenue growth. I mean, there was, and you can't do that forever and ever and ever.
Law of large numbers.
Yeah. So
you can. You just have to release
something magical every year.
Well, not every year. I think that every 3, 4, 5 years you have to have something that is truly different or you're going to disrupt another market. And I think Apple could disrupt some of these other markets. I think that they haven't. Whether it's I think cars are ripe to be disrupted. So are TVs. So are many other things. And Apple just has to decide where they're going to go with that.
One of the things that's been changing in Apple's. Go ahead, Andy. I'm sorry.
Well, it's also to be determined whether Apple is capable of disrupting other markets. They've been doing a lot of safe things recently, things that they're very much play to their strengths. The fact that Apple would be, if Apple had been getting into the TV market, if they've been getting into the car market, and they have to start marketing towards people who don't necessarily already love Apple, could they make a TV for people who can't be convinced that $4,000 is a reasonable amount of money to spend on a 28-inch 1080p TV?
I don't know if they need to market to people who don't like Apple. I mean, they have a lot of it. They have very, very large
people who do
base.
like it. Yeah,
I think they have enough installed base that people just selling into that ecosystem would probably be enough to keep growing the company.
Well, look at the revenue growth. Actually, where you're going to, and actually, let me ask Rene this because you looked at the numbers, I'm sure, in detail. One of the things that's going to be a growth generator for Apple is services. They've said that.
Yes.
And did we see that in the quarterly results?
Yeah, so services across the board are up. App Store keeps putting up record profits. Apple Music keeps growing. The challenge for Apple, when you look at something like a television, when you look at something like a car, and this is where you get those 1,000 no's for every yes, is they could be interesting products, but would they be great businesses? The iPhone was the ideal because Apple knows how to make those devices. Almost everybody wants a phone, and they figured out a way to get a premium price on all those phones. So they're making hundreds of millions of phones and making 30% margin on every one of those phones. It's incredibly unclear if you could make a television set. I'm talking about the panel display, not a service, but the television set that they could make hundreds of millions of and sell at 30% margin because it's a razor thin margin, and most people don't turn over television sets that quickly. Cars are worse because to make cars at scale, you still need gas engines. Tesla's not a car made at scale yet, and it's unclear how many they can manufacture because they may not even make their own internal sales goals for the Model 3. So making hundreds of millions of electric cars in the next 5 years, probably not doable. Making gas car, probably not interesting. What margin can you sell a car at? 33% margin? So a lot of these businesses might sound good, but they might also not be good businesses for Apple.
Also, keep in mind that cars, I actually researched this recently, cars stay on the road in the U.S. for an average of 11 years.
Yeah.
People do not turn over cars quickly. And so in televisions, I have no idea what the number is, but I agree with Renee.
It's 4 or 5 years anyway, yeah.
And I suck at this. I've bought like 3 televisions in my life.
Yeah.
So they just work.
Right.
Yeah.
They don't really wear out. That's right, yeah.
Yeah. So it's ridiculous. But I was going to say, we should also look. I mean, Apple did try to disrupt a market, and with the Apple Watch, and look where that's gone.
What are the numbers? They don't give out numbers on Apple Watch.
They don't give out numbers on the Apple Watch, but the IDC just came out with some numbers saying that the smartwatch market, except for Garmin, was tanking. That they just.
That's a limited, very limited market, and I think Apple. It's clear that Apple, in the direction it's taking now with the Apple Watch, recognizes the market really is sport.
It's all, and it's not even sport; it's fitness.
Fitness, yeah.
Which is really a different level, yeah. And partly why you see Garmin doing so well is they've got the full range, from the simple trackers all the way up to the very high end sports watches that athletes are using for different sports.
Yeah. So,
well, and I think that part of it is that it's I know with my watch, again, I get very frustrated with it. The fact that I'll be when I travel specifically, it's just really hard to keep it charged.
New one's pretty good though. So, I've been very happy.
Yeah, the new one lasted me 2 days and 4 workouts last year.
Yeah, the new one's been much better.
Is it the new one or WatchOS 3.3?
Because it's both together, I think.
Yeah, because the new battery on the series, the battery on the series 2, I put mine on 2 days ago. Did 4 workouts, walked 30,000. Whatever steps, and it only died at around 11 p.m. last night.
Yeah, it's much better than it used to be. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the question is sorry, go ahead.
Even with all of that, I still couldn't go back to the watch. I mean, the updates and timers and all kinds of other stuff that there's lots of stuff I'd like to see, but I use it enough. I think this is the issue. I use it enough that I couldn't go back to a watch that wasn't connected. And of course, it's easiest to do it.
I need my Apple Watch to tell my son to come down to dinner every night via Siri and texting. So
really,
hey,
you use your watch to do that?
Hey Siri, text Tristan, it's time for dinner. Every night.
Now he's going to come and have dinner.
Yeah, we don't have to yell.
Actually, that is nice. When I was a kid, my mom got a little bell.
And you
got tired of yelling up the stairs.
Dinner is served.
You still are yelling upstairs, except that the communications wavelength is on a different frequency now.
That's true.
It's no longer the audible spectrum.
Yes, it's RF now.
The thing about the Apple Watch, too, is like the Apple TV, where they're not Starship products. They're shuttlecraft products. The iPhone is still the Starship. The iPad is still the Starship. And those are the big revenue-generating products. And these are small, $300 products that Apple sells because it increases the overall value of their Starship products. And until they're independent products, it's hard to see whether, does Apple care if the Apple Watch is disruptive? No, it adds value to the iPhone. It adds $300 to the bill. And it's, they'll tell you it has as much brand affinity as anything but a Rolex. So to them, it's still a net win. It's not meant to disrupt an industry. It's meant to make the iPhone better.
How were iPad sales? Were they good?
Yeah, compared to everybody else, they're fantastic.
Were they up or down?
Down, but revenues were flat because the iPad Pro was providing higher margins.
Ah, okay.
So iPad Pro seems to be a bright spot within the iPad itself, not doing as well. So that was kind of interesting.
How about Mac sales?
Again, not great, but
better than everybody else.
There were no Macs to drive Mac sales, which was their huge problem for the last years. That for the last 18 months there were no Mac Pros. For the last 2 years there were no Mac Pros and MacBook Pros. For the last 3 years there's been no Mac Pro. For the last 2.5 years there's been no Mac Mini. And the new products drive sales. Absent new products, it just peters off.
It's so funny because I go to the Mac Pro site and it's not been updated.
No.
It's beautiful still, but it's 3 years old. And they're touting things, that are kind of old hat now.
Obama's just beginning a second term.
Yeah, they mention how well it works with aperture.
Yeah, it's a Power Mac G4 Cube.
But you would, I guess you make a great site, just leave it that way for 3.5 years. Why change things? Do you think anybody has bought a Mac Pro this year? Anybody?
Yeah, yeah, not many.
Alex, have you bought a Mac Pro this year?
I bought 3 when they first came out, and I'm still using them.
Yeah. I gave
when they first came out. I probably generation 2 or whatever. Like, it was a slight update, and I bought them, and we still use them. I mean, we use them every day.
Are they practical?
I mean, for if you're using Final Cut, yeah, absolutely.
I guess though, at this point, you'd probably wish you could upgrade it.
Oh yeah. I mean, they're the least computer. They're
your low power. They're probably lower than your
MacBook Pro is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, compared to our almost every other piece of hardware other than our laptops, they're the slowest thing we have in the office. I mean, we've got a lot of beefy machines in here, and multiple GPUs and all kinds of big CPUs and everything else. And so for us, these are the little machines that we some of our software is required. So
the small auxiliary machines is what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, they're extensible enough that it makes sense to have them, because the iMacs don't have enough Thunderbolts, and there's all kinds of little things about that make it worth having the what are typically we all call trash cans, and so the trash cans have what we need to do what we they're useful for what we're doing, but it's mostly video production, or specifically the Ozos that we use have a lot of Mac software right now, and so we run some of the stuff there with that. But really, our hard work is done by some pretty beefy PCs and Linux boxes.
Yeah. And by the way, I stand corrected, because I said they hadn't updated the site, and they have. It says Mac OS Sierra comes with it now.
That was a search and replace, Leo.
It probably was. I'm thinking.
The thing with the Mac Pro, to me, that's galling, is that you can talk to hardware people and you can listen, Intel's Xeon chipset is on this schedule, and when companies are fabbing graphics chips, we don't have the capacity to demand. They do. There's all these excuses for them, but they chose to make it an appliance. If they kept it in the cheese grater, people could be swapping their own cards, and they could probably be swapping a lot more.
But once you choose to make it,
once you choose to make an appliance, you take all the responsibility for updating and keeping that appliance current. I don't mind that you make an appliance, but you're then telling me that I don't have to worry about it. You're going to give me new versions at a frequent enough schedule that I will always be cutting edge with my technology, because that's what I need. And that's what they've out in 3 years, just inexcusable.
Well, I think
Apple has that's a deep responsibility that Apple has by being the only source of iOS products, the only source of macOS products. They may not want to make a cheese grater box for their high-end Macs. That might not interest them, but they have a responsibility to do that, and not just in fear of losing users, but also to basically avoid just kicking users right in the back, because it's no small thing to, after 10 years of using one platform that you really like, to have to switch to a different platform. And you have to have a really good. I think you have to have a really good reason for saying, we know why you like this style. We have decided that we like to do a Quaker Oats box shaped computer because we get bored with squares.
Well, and I think that one of the things that when you look at all of this hardware at this point, and I'm sure we'll get into this soon, is that I just think that Apple should release the restrictions on the OS, because they're obviously not interested in Mac.
Hold that thought, because you're absolutely right. That's the next conversation. In fact, I kind of brought up the Pro as a segue into what obviously is going to be the hot topic of the day.
Sneaky.
But before we do that, let me do
you
an ad.
You opened the door. I tried to sneak my way through.
You did. You put the camel's nose, all of that. Anything else to say about the quarterly results? I think we said it all. Services 24% year-over-year growth, as we mentioned. And Apple has said
everything but iPhone. That's the other thing that's interesting there. More than anything but iPhone.
In total revenue, $24.3 billion for services, and Apple, I think people widely agree, isn't that good at services. So there's a lot, but that means there's a lot of opportunity there. iCloud, people are using it, right? Apple Music, they're using it. So here's an opportunity for Apple to show even more growth there. Let's take a break, because we will talk about the Apple event. That's what I've been holding on to. It's my ace in the hole. But first, I want to show you what was such a great thing. Had I had trick-or-treaters, I would have been able to see them coming with my Ring video doorbell. I kind of missed the boat on this thing. We didn't have any trick-or-treaters, but if you did, the idea that you could see people coming up your walkway and get to the door before they ring that doorbell gives you all sorts of fun opportunities, doesn't it? And you've got crystal clear video of every single person who came to your door on your Mac, your PC, your iPhone, your Android device. I love the Ring video doorbell. I just saw yet another news report of a bad guy busted because of the Ring video doorbell. He was prowling the neighborhood. They got video. They were able to catch the guy. It's just I'll find that story for you because somebody just emailed it to me. It's just amazing, really, what the Ring Video Doorbell does. Easy to replace your existing doorbell. Or if you don't have a doorbell, you can even add it anywhere because the original Ring has a big old battery that lasts a year. You could charge it up, lithium-ion battery. Or if you don't need it, if you've got wires coming out of your door jamb because you have a regular doorbell there, you can use the new Ring Pro 1080p video. Not just video though; it's got a microphone and a speaker on it, and it's connected to your Wi-Fi. So when somebody rings your doorbell or even just walks up your steps, you'll get notified on your computer, on your phone, wherever you are in the world. And that is kind of amazing. I love the Ring Video Doorbell. I want you to take a look at it. They've got a whole range of products now. The Ring Pro. They've got the new stick-up cam, which is basically a doorbell without the doorbell, just the camera, microphone, and speaker, so you can keep an eye on other parts of the property. And you can power that with their new solar panel, so you don't even have to plug it in. You can be completely wireless, which is really fantastic. You can put it out in the back 40. Keep an eye on what's going on out there. The Ring Chime's nice too. That allows you to put a doorbell where you don't have a doorbell. So if there's a part of your house, maybe your wood shop or out back, you can put a chime, plug it into the wall, pair it to the Wi-Fi, and now you can hear the doorbell everywhere. So they've put together a bunch of kits. They call them the Ring of Security kits, and you can save right now up to $150. Choose the kit with the devices you want. Every kit, of course, gets this new illuminated Ring sign, which is a great way to let the bad guys know that you are protected. And the sign is solar powered, so it's always brightly lit at night. You don't need to light your pathway, though. I didn't mention this, but it has night vision, so you can see everything going on at your door all the time. I want you to go to ring.com/MacBreak, ring.com/MacBreak, and pick your Ring of Security kit and big savings for you, up to $150 off. Ring.com/MacBreak for yourself, your family, your friends, for your parents. If you want to keep an eye on what's going on your front walk and on your porch, this is such a great solution. Ring.com/MacBreak. We're talking MacBreak Weekly. Adam Engst is here from Tidbits. You stayed home and watched the stream, you said, on your Apple TV. Yeah.
I will say that, when it works, which it usually does pretty well, that's just such a win for not having to travel across the country.
It's so nice, especially since you get 1 week notice. Andy Ihnatko opted to stay home too. He actually joined us for our stream. I wasn't here. I watched you from Gainesville, and that was a lot of fun with Jason and Megan and Andy.
Yep, I was at the Microsoft event the day before, so that was another reason to keep me on the East Coast.
That was interesting juxtaposition, wasn't it? We'll talk about that in a second. Also with us, Rene Ritchie from imore.com and Alex Lindsay. I'm glad you're here today, Alex, because you, of all of us, are the target market for any pro product Apple makes. You do Final Cut, you do all sorts of video stuff, high-end graphics, and so you're the audience at Apple. Now, Apple's traditionally had, but I wonder, did you watch the Microsoft event? Did you look at the Surface Studio?
I didn't watch either of the events. We were on streams.
You were busy.
But I did read up I read the Cliff Notes and saw the photos and saw some of the videos of all those bits and pieces. And so
I think it's so surprising to see Microsoft go after this audience that traditionally Apple has owned. They call the next edition of Windows, which comes out in March, the Creative Edition. They've created a computer that really at a price point of $3,000, same price point as the Mac Pro. Of course, it includes a screen for that price, a 28-inch high-res. Apple would call it Retina, but that's an Apple marketing term. High-res P3 full color gamut. In fact, you have a little switch on it that could choose between sRGB and P3, which is kind of, I presume, something professionals want. But more importantly, it's a touch screen. You can use a pen. It's pressure sensitive, and you can tilt it to an angle like a drafting table, a 20-degree angle, and use that little knob, which reminds me a lot of the Griffin PowerMate from days gone by. That must be 20 years old now. But you could but unlike the Power Mate, you could put it on the screen. The screen will sense it's there if the right software is running, and do something interesting with it, like give you a palette.
And a lot of it, it's very similar to it's like having a big Wacom tablet.
A Cintiq.
I do believe there's still, it's a Cintiq.
But the Cintiq's $1,500. Is there a 28-inch Cintiq? It's expensive.
I think there might be one, but it's about the price. The Cintiq is about the same price as the large Cintiq is about the same price as that computer. So I think that there are some definite advantages, to that. I think that I do think Microsoft really knocked it out of the park as far as price and performance and the kind of features that they put together.
The Cintiq is tops out at 27 inches,
which I'm sure is why they made it 28.
Yeah, so just a little bit bigger. Let me just see what the Cintiq 28 would set me back here. Oh,
I was talking to some friends of mine who are creators. As a matter of fact, as luck would have it, I was having lunch with a friend of mine who's a colorist, works for DC Comics, and bounced some things off of her and some other people, and that basically they could buy the brand new Surface Studio for about what it would cost to upgrade their own studios to have third-party stuff attached to whatever they've got right now. So people aren't shy. People aren't thrown by the price, particularly because, as Alex I think will attest, if you make money with your hardware, so long as you're making money with it, you forget in 20 seconds that you paid $3,000 or $4,000 for this. If it's making you $8,000 or $10,000 a month.
Now, and we have to acknowledge that whether it's Microsoft or Apple, this is a small segment, but
it's a high margin segment. The thing
is, and psychologically, it's an important segment.
It's an influential segment.
It's hard to. Anyway,
if you look at
it's also innovative.
That's right. Gaming, for instance, has driven PC marketplace for years because that's the stuff that really requires all the hardware. And this is the same. This is similar, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is the payoff of a lot of decisions that Microsoft has been making over the past 3 or 4 or 5 years, and all this. I'm sure we'll get into this later on, but this is the sort of thing you're hoping that this is the video that you're hoping that Apple shows off after they say can't innovate my ass. Well, let me show you how we can innovate. Yeah, and that's what you're hoping to see.
Well, and if you watch the video, the ad for it. I mean, if I hadn't told you ahead of time, you would think, oh, I'm watching a Surface ad. I mean, Apple ad. Yeah. What? Here, let me play. Let me just play a little bit of it for you, because it's and I'll play the music too, because this is from the from Willy Wonka, right?
Yeah.
So it's it's a very Apple-y kind of close up, focusing on the feel. In fact, that even looks like the Apple invitation.
Also, there's a lot of theater involved too. When they showed it off on stage, it was deployed in its like desktop iMac configuration, and they wait until after the video saying, "Look, we can actually fold it flat to a drafting table angle."
They did that last year too. Panas Panay is very good at the reveal.
Yeah,
and so there's one little problem. It's running Windows. And I'm wondering if that makes a difference to the creative audience.
That's not Windows. That's not available until next year.
Well, unfortunately, you can't run Aperture. Oh wait, you can't run Aperture on the Macs either. Yeah. Well, you can't run Photoshop. Oh wait, you can run Photoshop on it. Oh, you can run everything but Final Cut on it. Basically, this is a lot of. I see this as a lot of chickens coming home to roost after Apple has basically said, "Well, fine, leave us if you don't like the new Final Cut. We don't care about you. Fine, leave us if you need the new Aperture. We don't care about you either." And so they realized that they wound up with a lot of like Mac users who are now switched completely to apps that are available on any platform. So for a lot of users, it would be a lateral move to go from whatever they're using right now, a Mac Pro, to a Surface Studio, if they thought that the Surface Studio was a compelling device for them.
Well, and I think that the creative group would, folks that I work with, and for us, it'd be a big change to switch over to Windows on a variety of bits and pieces. I think that
as you mentioned, for instance, the Ozo has Mac software, right?
Yeah, but that'll probably evolve over time. I think that was where they started, and there's a handful of things that we can only use. Of course, we actually use Final Cut, which, by the way, had probably one of the more important updates last week as well. And so it's a huge upgrade for the
it
platforms.
Is it? So, for instance, we abandoned it here because of the lagging hardware platform, but also because of some technical issues. We couldn't use our SAN with the re-released Final Cut, so we went to Adobe Premiere and Dell Workstations.
And a lot of the SAM and SMB issues have all been. Those have been long handled.
Had we stayed with Final Cut, we'd be okay. Now, although we'd be kind of bemoaning the 3.5-year-old Mac Pro.
Yeah.
But so you got to look at what you're also doing. What makes more of a difference for Final Cut, for instance, is the drive speed. So if you're able to get faster drive speeds, you're going to be you can still edit. I edit 4K on my laptop.
But the Mac Pro
now,
is still only Thunderbolt 2.
But it's still, as I said, it's most people aren't doing that much 4K, and we're already able to do that right now with that. So it's still it does need to be updated. We will get into my complaints about that.
Are professionals going to the 5K iMac because of course that is faster?
No, I think a lot of people are still using the Mac Pro because of the connections. I think that's what really makes a difference. For a lot of them. Now, definitely if they're doing smaller things, and we think the thing we have to realize is that while we talk about high-end, film professionals and TV professionals, the vast majority of users in the education market, corporate market, personal market, at the price point that Final Cut is running, with the level of performance that it provides, the other platform, Premiere and Avid don't really make a lot of sense. You're paying. There hasn't been an upgrade cost for Final Cut since it came out. Since the new version came out, at $300, it's really hard to, and now what's happened with the. We just had a MacBreak or a Final Cut virtual user group last night. So if you go up to PixScore's YouTube channel, you'll see a big breakdown by the pros talking about this. But what Apple did is instead of trying to do whiz-bang features for Final Cut, they basically changed the way that they manage audio, metadata on audio, all the things that you need to do a big film, to do a big complicated, like the heavy lifting of doing really complex edits. Is stuff that they really took on as far as organizational process. No. I think Apple has a larger installed base of Final Cut right now than they had in 7.
Because I kept hearing how Hollywood was abandoning Final Cut over the last couple of years.
Hollywood there's a huge pyramid of users.
Right. Hollywood's just a little slice.
So if when it comes to actual mass, I don't think that Final Cut's in any trouble there. And they continue to upgrade it, and the challenge that both Adobe and Avid will have is that they're on an older code base, and they're not going to be able to innovate as fast, as far as adding a lot of these features and continuing to move that stuff forward.
So at this point, Final Cut has surpassed what Premiere can do?
Yeah, I opened up. There's some tools that I've used in Premiere and Premiere to and interoperability with After Effects and Photoshop is still pretty useful. But I could never go back to
interesting
layered tracks like that. That whole it's cute. But it's 20 years old, and it, and so if you're actually wanting to work quickly, what Apple is really, what their team has really gotten good at is metadata and being able to find things and organize things very, very quickly. You can be, at this point, Final Cut can bring in what's, all the XML and a lot of the other metadata that is available. So there's a lot of things that can be done with that. So that for that group of people, they're still going to use a Mac. Now, for people using Photoshop, it's just a matter of them getting over the idea of using a PC.
Photoshop, Mac and PC is identical. Lightroom at Mac and PC is identical, right?
It is, other than use the rest of the computer. It depends on how much you can use the rest of the computer. For a Mac user, it's still. I have a Surface tablet as well as a Mac, and I carry them around. And
you
I
do? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I'm not. But it's still more painful. Like Windows is not as easy to use and so on and so forth than a Mac. So the and I've been going back and forth between PCs for 25 years, and so it's I think that the interesting thing here is that what I find myself now looking at is that I really. And what I talked to a little bit before the commercial break is I really wish Apple would just release the Mac OS and let us run it on any hardware and stop worrying about it. I don't think that they're making hardware.
Yeah.
I don't think they're making hardware for professionals anymore. I don't think that the Mac Pro
So let's get down to it, because that's really what this conversation is. And I led off with Microsoft just showing that they're at least eyeballing that market and trying to make something that might get that market excited with the Surface Studio. But really where this conversation begins is with the Apple event. And we've all been watching with interest to see, for some commitment from Apple to the Macintoshes. We've talked about how they haven't been updated much, but then we've also pointed out that Intel hasn't really given us a reason. There are new GPUs out there and so forth. And now they've announced laptops where it looks to some, and you can go back and forth on this, that Apple has prioritized thin and light and battery life over power.
If I hear thin and light one more time from that thing,
well, and for instance, Apple said we're not going to make more than 16 gigs of RAM available because we want to save battery life. So a Pro will look at that, right, and say, well, that's not. I mean, I've heard you say I had a 32 gig Mac Pro, and you said, well, that's about the minimum.
Right. Well,
if you're using Photoshop, it's very memory hungry. I presume that Final Cut is as well.
Well, I believe that some of the restrictions, and I can't remember where I read this, where I was looking through some articles, that some of that might be some esoteric, not esoteric, but restrictions of the FAA related to checking
really?
100 watt hour max on the and I don't know if that's true or not. But
well,
I read something.
Phil Schiller sent a note to a Mac Rumors reader saying, "Thank you for the email. It's a good question. To put more than 16 gigs of fast RAM in a notebook design at this time would require a memory system that consumes much more power and wouldn't be efficient enough for a notebook. I hope you check out this new generation MacBook Pro. It really is an incredible system." Maybe there are other reasons, but I mean, Schiller himself said it was about battery life.
It's complicated because there's
over that 100 watt hours. So they want a certain, like for instance, if they did all of that, they're still stuck with the same size battery, and so you end up with it lasting for an hour and a half if it's not plugged in, and then
I see what you're saying. So if they were going to put more RAM in it, they'd want to put a bigger battery, and then they would run up against.
Yeah, so it's a little bit complicated. So what happens is Intel Skylake still does not support the low power version of DDR4 RAM. That's been pushed to Kaby Lake, and maybe it won't land in Kaby Lake. Maybe it'll go to Coffee Lake or Cannon Lake even. So in order to use low power RAM, Apple is limited to 16 gigabytes. They can do what some other companies have done, and that is use a different chipset that allows you to put in more RAM, but then you don't get the low power version anymore, and you get what Alex said. You get 2 hours of battery life, and it's a real restriction. The battery. You cannot literally ship it to customers, or customers cannot take it on airplanes if that battery goes over a certain size. It's why the iPad Pro filled up the case with speakers and not battery, even though people just put more battery, and it becomes illegal at a certain size and a certain cell density to put more battery in. So the thinner and lighter is sort of Apple. Lying is the wrong word. By choosing the parts that they chose, they are constrained to a certain size. They can't make the computer bigger, so the casing gets to shrink because all the other components have shrunk, because that's what technology does over time. So they can literally put the case in the dryer for a while, and it ends up being smaller. But the smaller is not a design goal. The smaller and lighter is a result of them being on Skylake, having this memory limitation, having this power envelope that they want, the thermal envelope that they have, and the power levels they want to meet, and then all of those parts come together and they basically wrap it up in a shiny aluminum coating. So it is a absolute limit of technology given the choice that Apple wants to make, or their unwillingness to make a giant desktop version of a laptop.
Well, or a slightly thicker version of a desktop.
It doesn't work either. That doesn't work either for them.
Remember how they just a month ago they were saying, "Oh, it's so hard. We have so little space. If only we had more space to put all kinds of wonderful things in these things."
But that's a tiny phone. The phone has no battery constraint.
But I'm saying that a laptop you could make it a larger case, even if you are constrained by what you can do with battery size. You can still make it really one of the best high-end laptops you can possibly in terms of convenience and features. But they decided they wanted to make it 3 millimeters thinner.
It would be a bigger case that is still empty because the components would be the same size inside it.
You could fill it with a decent keyboard. You could fill it with an SD card slot. You could fill it with all kinds of other things. It wouldn't be filled with air.
And I know that we're obsessed with these USB-C, but limiting us to only those just means that I just have a whole bunch of other things that I now have to have in my bag just to connect to it. I still look back at when Andy said that we would miss the Ethernet, and I think of that, every day. Because I hook an Ethernet cable up to my computer every day. And we're talking about pro users. So the thing is we're not talking about, I get it to have like 1 or 2 USB-Cs in a consumer laptop, in the MacBook or whatever. But when you're talking about pros, we're going to hook peripherals in, and we're going to be on the road where a MagSafe is really an important piece of material for us. I mean, I'm now looking back to the years where my computer got yanked off of, I'm looking at this USB-C as power, and considering the years that I had my computers yanked off my desk, had the pins bent, broken, all of those things had gone away with the MagSafe for a long time. And Apple chose to, take that out, which was, I almost want someone to build like a case with a battery that goes around my MacBook, a MacBook Pro that builds me a flush maglev, MagSafe,
like a lunch tray size Mophie.
Yeah, right.
Yes, but there are more. With all due respect, Alex, there are more fundamental issues. The lack of more than 16 gigs of RAM. It's DDR3, not DDR4 RAM. We're now learning the details of the Radeon that is in there, the Polaris architecture. Very unimpressive compared. I guess the real point, and a lot of people are saying, is I can buy a PC laptop for half the price with twice the power. And Apple, because they're the only people that make this thing, Apple's really turning its back on the power user.
But here's the thing. I mean, and Alex can certainly talk to this more. It feels to me as though the laptop is never going to be your main machine. That
it is my main machine.
It is. But there's always been
for a lot of people.
And I think that's what Apple's proposing is that or your iPad Pro is your main machine.
They're also saying that a power user is changing. Like Jonathan Zdarsky was very vocal on Twitter saying, "I'm a power user. I don't do any video, but you can't not call me a power user." And I love this, or I don't know if he said love it, but he really liked it. There's, based on at least the responses I'm getting, there is a huge gulf now in what we determine as a power user. Video professionals absolutely hate this machine. They hate the RAM limits. They hate the interconnects. They hate everything, all the choices made in here. But there is this huge other swap of people who also self-identify as professionals. Even some of them who do photography. Not all photographers, but developers and people in design industries and all sorts of other areas who absolutely consider themselves pros and are thrilled to have modern high-speed connects on this thing. They're thrilled to have a P3 display, and are thrilled to have the things that Apple is focusing on. So I think it's also dangerous when you just lump all power users into one big bucket.
Alex, I'm sorry, Adam,
you're talking like the 4K. You're talking about the Retina, the 5K Retina iMac. I mean, that's a 4 gigahertz Intel Core quad core i7, and that's on mine, which was the original one. I don't know what the current speeds are. It's gonna be a lot faster. It's gonna have a better screen. There's just no question about that. And so the laptops, yeah, they're fine machines. Don't get me wrong, but they're just never gonna match up to the desktops.
I don't. But so that's not what
but it's like there are a lot of people that I can't afford to have a top of the line MacBook and a top of the line iMac. Okay, if this is going to be my, it's very correct to say that you can't. It's very correct to say that you can't really define one person, one type of person as a professional user. There are a lot of people for whom this is going to be the hub of my entire life, whether you work in an office or you're self-employed, you're a writer, you're a photographer, whatever. And I think that something that gets thrown under the bus is people who don't necessarily want extreme high power, but they want convenience. They don't want to have to travel with a increasingly big bag full of dongles and attachments. They want to have a comfortable keyboard or even a decent keyboard to work with. That saving 3 millimeters off the thickness of a device adds nothing to the power of the device. And once again, we just butt heads with a situation that, if this were Dell who decided to make these changes, okay, well, if that's too bad, I guess I'll take a look at Lenovo. I'll take a look at what Microsoft is doing. With Apple, it becomes, is this the machine that do I need a machine of this class? Yes. Or is there a platform-wide limitation that I can't work around? No. Yes, there is. So, okay, so I guess that you're kind of screwed out of having a mobile Macintosh for the entire future.
And I feel so much better than the previous MacBook. I mean, the 12-inch MacBook was a disaster that way. Right?
Well,
one USB-C port compared to 4 Thunderbolt ports.
The 12-inch MacBook had an advantage in that it was designed to be smaller. It was designed to be lighter. It was for people who wanted to make that vote. For people who were frustrated, maybe that, gee, I really wish there was something even lighter than. I wish there was. I envy somewhat some of the Windows ultralights that are more powerful than a MacBook Air, have the higher density screen, have a touch screen, have all these really nice creature comforts, but are super light. And if you didn't like it, that's no problem, because there's still MacBook Airs, there are still MacBook Nothings. Excuse me, there's still MacBook Pros out there.
I don't think the complaint is about the Macs that they're offering. The complaint is that there isn't one more Mac that's a no compromise MacBook.
They made a lower SKU version that took out all the, like, you could get one with less ports and you could get one without the Magic Bar, but you can't get one on top of the 15 inches that says, hey, we're giving you a couple extra ports, we're giving you a better graphics option. Yeah, there's less battery life, but if you keep it plugged in at your desk most of the time or plugged in at work most of the time and you don't care, you have this offering. And that to me is the harder part. Like, the dongles I don't really care about. Like, the MacBook helped me get rid of those. I'll keep dongles for a year. And I was looking after this event because I was furious about the ports and the lack of dongles. And I realized I had the MagSafe 1 to MagSafe 2 adapter, the Ethernet adapter that I had to then change from this kind of Ethernet adapter to that. And I stopped over the course of the year. I'd stopped using them. And it's easy to stop using a dongle. It is impossible to take an old connector on a computer and make it a new connector.
If you just bought a new iPhone 7, you can't connect it to your MacBook Pro.
I mean, I haven't connected my iPhone.
And frankly, you have to have 2 pairs of headphones
now.
Good
for you, Renee.
Yeah, but lots of other people do, and now you need 2 kinds of headphones, because the headphones that work, I mean, it's as if, I don't know, it seems like they could have done one
I'm just
more.
I'm just looking at my desk here.
Scheduling snap.
I don't even use headphones, and I've got 4 pairs sitting on my desk. I mean,
there's, like I said, there's absolutely and there's a scheduling snafu here, because that iPhone, this MacBook was supposed to be out before that iPhone, so those headphones would not exist in the world where this thing actually shipped on time.
I get it. Okay.
And they do, and there is the Lightning USB USB-C cable.
Yeah,
now.
There's no doubt you have dongles that can make it work with everything. But
it's just a different cable. I mean, you're paying $3,000 for a laptop. I'll tell you that now. $2,000 for a laptop.
Yeah,
it's not for me. It's not the money.
A couple of cables here and there isn't the big deal.
It's not the money. It is that I spend a lot. I mean, I do 250,000 miles a year on the road, and the thing is that for me, it's all about, I can't go somewhere now and get a connector that's going to work. Like with a regular USB, for instance, now I got to figure that out. If I lost something, forgot something, and then again, the number one reason I don't travel, I got a 12-inch, the little MacBook or whatever, and the number one reason I stopped using it was because I didn't have a MagSafe. Like when I'm traveling, it is getting, my computers are sitting on my lap, they're getting pulled, they're getting pushed, they're whatever, and I was just like, I was just sure that I was going to break it. I was going to break it, and I'm just, and when you're used to a MagSafe. I mean, it is one of the best things that Apple ever created, and to take it out of the laptop line is literally, I don't, I'm kind of mystified by that. It is a, because it is the thing when you're as a road warrior, it is the thing that people kick it out all the time, and you're always plugging it back in, going, oh, I'm really glad that wasn't a hard connection, to my computer, and especially the way these things are built, where they're basically not really fixable if they break. so they're those kinds of things are going to be lethal, and we have a lot of them, so I have, it's not just that I have a MacBook Pro. I have 40 of them, we in the company, and so we have to decide when and how we're going to upgrade those, and and so on and so forth, and I don't know. I literally don't know how I'm going to manage that process. We'll do it begrudgingly at some point, but it's, I'm just sure that half of them are going to get messed up.
I accept that Apple can't make a computer for everybody. It can't even make one computer for the 5 of us.
Yes.
So I understand that, and I'm not even complaining, because frankly, the MacBook Pro is fine for me, but I do see a lot of people saying, we wish there were more power. And,
I just wish that
and everybody's talking about this article in Medium, by the way. This is
which
Apple
is a little
just
confused.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know if that's the article.
I was going to say, we looked at it and was like, ooh,
The article was Apple has just announced to the world it doesn't know who the MacBook Pro is for. I think it knows exactly who it wants to get with the MacBook Pro, and it's made some decisions that we're going to prioritize thin and light, for instance, and better battery life over more power. We don't want to have a 4th SKU that is a super MacBook Pro. I'm just wondering what that means for the professional. What that means for a segment of the market that Apple has really owned for a long time.
I would
and care deeply about it.
Yeah.
Well,
that's the real issue. Is there a lot of people who are very upset about this? Go ahead, Andy.
To me, it's not the issue of making professionals happy, because it's easy to say, well, Apple's a consumer company and they're a lifestyle brand. They're not a maker of high-end computers anymore. I think it really is about the question of, if I walk into an Apple store with money that it took me time to earn that I value, do I get to have what I want and what I need? Or am I going to have someone tell me, oh, you'll get used to it? Or, oh, you're just hanging on to something that's old fashioned and you're one of these people that is, you're an edge case. It doesn't matter. I mean, for $2,000, hell, for $200, I should be able to get something that I want. And so what it really does borderline depress me, that time and time again, when Apple comes out with something new, when someone makes a legitimate complaint, and there are legitimate complaints abound about new hardware, it becomes, you'll get used to it. Not, this is perfect, this is wonderfully designed, this is thoughtfully put out, there are reasons why this decision was made, and they are consumer positive. It's, don't worry. In a couple of years, you were going to be using this connector anyway. And until then, you'll be using dongles, and you'll get used to it. Come on, you're just getting stuck in the model. For me, it really is hitting me personally, because the keyboard is terrible. Okay, have
you tried the new one? Because some people are saying, yes, it's the same as the MacBook.
It's pretty much the same. It's the second generation, but it feels
like it has more travel.
I've had only 10 or 15 minutes with it, and I can't really tell a difference between that and the old keyboard. Okay. And to me,
that is a real showstopper, because I agree with you. And it's not type accurately with the MacBook.
And it's not just, again, I didn't really complain about it when I reviewed the MacBook Nothing, because again, there's a reason for making a super flat keyboard. There's almost no space for anything. There's no space for air molecules inside there, literally. But I mean, there's a reason why some people buy the MacBook Pro and not the MacBook Air, or whatever's going to replace the MacBook Air. It's because I am making the vote that I'm willing to get a computer that's a little bit thicker and a little bit heavier, but I want to be able to be sure that when I plop that on the podium, when I give one of my talks, I don't have to think, God damn it, I forgot I didn't bring my Ethernet thing, or oh damn it, I didn't bring my adapter for this, or damn it, I need to plug in this thumb drive, but I don't have the right port. I don't have a USB 8 style port on this. I needed to bring the right adapter for this. But with the keyboard, that's an absolute showstopper. I can't underscore this enough. That is an absolute showstopper. And for no rational reason, they have decided to put this terrible flat keyboard on the premium machine that's going to cost me thousands of dollars. And I think that one of the greatest gifts I gave myself was accidentally dumping an entire can of Diet Dr. Pepper into my perfectly good 2-year-old MacBook last year, forcing me to buy one in 2015, because this one is going to last me a couple of years now, and I am, for the first time in my life, I am trying to get my head around the fact that in 2 years, I will need to buy a new notebook, and that notebook will not be made by Apple. It will not run macOS. It's not because I think that Apple has stopped innovating. It's not because I think that the Mac still isn't my favorite operating system. It's because this keyboard is absolutely unusable to me. And if you like it, that's great. I'm not saying you're stupid for liking what you like, but I'm saying that I'm not an idiot. I'm not old-fashioned, and I'm not refusing to get used to something because my fingers are telling me this is a crappy Atari 1983 keyboard. I mean, I bought this as luck would have it. I bought this on eBay. This is a ThinkPad external keyboard. They took the keyboard off of a ThinkPad, a Lenovo ThinkPad, and made it into just an external. And it's gorgeous. It's beautiful to use. I love typing on this thing, and it cost me $48, and it absolutely kicks the ass of the keyboard on this $2,000 device. So it just bothers me that I'm going to have to likely either buy a Windows laptop in a year or two, or decide that I can get by without having an actual laptop. And if there were a reason why Apple did that, I would say, great, that's technology forward, good for you. But they basically said, hey, 3 millimeters thinner, you're welcome.
So it's also possible they screwed up. I mean, they have done that, like the iPod, the iPod Shuffle when they No, I mean, like the iPod Shuffle, when they went to no buttons, like we're innovating, there's no buttons, it's all voice, and
Nobody
they
wanted
very
it.
quickly.
Yeah.
So the thing with Apple is there's so few products that when they make these big gambles, they have to win. They have to win every time, and
to
they
me,
don't.
that's the challenge. You know, in the PC marketplace, if you're buying a Windows machine, there's such a variety and there's so much competition that you can almost certainly find something that is pretty close to what you're looking for. But Apple's the only company that makes these, and this is kind of to what you were saying, Alex, that maybe they should let Mac OS fly free and let some other companies make these things. But this is the choice. These are what they give us. And Apple doesn't want to make 20 different SKUs of the MacBook. I understand that. So, and 4 is a lot, frankly.
But they got to make the right ones.
And
right now they're making a really weird collection of them too.
I'm going to trust that they've done a lot of research, that they've talked to their. If you're a business, what you're going to do is knowing you can only make 4 or 5 models of laptops, is try to make the ones that are going to sell the best, right? Or no?
Well, but sometimes they think they know better. I mean, they do look at numbers. They're an incredibly smart company. They prototype everything. There are all sorts of different versions of these MacBooks, and these are the ones they chose to go with. But sometimes it's also just their gut. Like we think the market is going this way. You can't always follow the markets because then you never sort of get the customers to come on. And I spent a lot of time defending Apple, and people will call me out on it. I just want to explain why they made these choices, and then you can choose to hate them or to love them, and you could say it's not for you. And I've not spent enough time with this MacBook Pro to make my own choice yet, because I'm coming from a 13-inch with the keyboard that Andy mentioned, and a lot of things that I love about it, and a lot of different ports. But this is absolutely the one they want to make, and if they bet wrong on this, we'll see a quick change next year. But it's definitely the most divisive MacBook I think I've ever seen, even more than the MacBook 12.
It is, and for whatever your opinion on this, and everybody's probably also read Chuck von Rosbach's pieces on this as well.
Yeah.
And he says, and this event's criticism has been louder, more widespread, and angrier than I remember seeing for a long time.
I mean, I just would have, as a Mac Pro user, I would have preferred them to make. I just wish they just made minor updates. Like, don't even do an event.
That's what Chuck says. He says, Chuck, the problem is we demand Apple innovate, but we insist they don't change anything.
It's true.
No, we insist they don't screw it up. Like it is.
Well, if you're going to innovate good.
Yeah, it's true. You have to.
Yeah.
It's just that they're so obsessed with forgetting the past and minimalism at this point that's fine for the iPhone. You want to get rid of the headphone jack, that's fine. But the thing is that as pros we do have needs, and the thing is we have needs when we're and the thing is we have to tie this together, and the thing is we don't care about it being thinner or smaller. Like, we don't care. Like, don't care. Like, it is, I don't care that it's a little bit lighter and a little bit whatever. It doesn't matter to me. Like, I just want it to be fast and, fast and work well and have a good keyboard and be something that is the one computer that wanders around in my backpack, that's giving me, that's sending me to the chiropractor. I don't care. I don't care what that looks like. If you look at the rest of my backpack, it's 10 times more, heavy than whatever I'm carrying here. And so the thing is that we need it to work well, and I guess, I would have been happy. I probably would have been less bitter if I'd had the MagSafe. I know it seems like a little thing, but it's gonna, there's gonna be a lot of people that are gonna start talking about that once they have this. Is that suddenly they go back to Apple users go back to having their computers kicked off of things that we haven't had for a decade.
It's also a context that makes this more painful, because the Mac Pro, because of it's been so long since we've had an update, because of the Mac Mini, and I think that underlying all of this angst really is the sense that maybe Apple is giving up on Macintosh.
Well, they're certainly not focusing on it. I hope that this is an iPhone company.
Yeah.
Like I hope that Apple gives up on the Mac and just releases Mac OS so that we can use it on other pieces of hardware. Like, just give up, just put it out there. Like, I don't want it.
It's never going to happen. So it's no point in even bringing it up again, Alex. Apple's never going to do that.
Well, I'm just.
And it'd be hard because it's so tightly integrated into what they do.
And there's licenses.
Atoms are so close into the bits.
It's just, I can't see Apple ever doing that.
Well, I think that if they care, they're going to have to figure out something. Either figure out what, how their head is shoved into the ground here or not.
I think what you have to do as a user is watch this with development, with interest, and at some point you're going to have to choose a different ecosystem that gives you more choice if you want that choice.
Right.
People come to me all the time and say, well, I want my iPhone to do this or that, or why can't I do this with my iPhone? And I tell them, when you choose Apple, you're choosing to do it Apple's way. And
I don't care.
You can complain and bitch all you want, but you're going to be doing it Apple's way.
Vote with your wallet.
The only choice you have is to find another ecosystem.
And I think that the issue is, that's a good point. I think that the issue is that, like with my phone, I don't really care. I don't care if it's simple. I don't care that it doesn't do everything that an Android does.
But some people do. I mean, it just as you do about pro things, everybody has their thing, right?
No, I understand. I think that as a pro, I think because I spend so much time on my on my Mac Pro, is that I'm much more sensitive to what's being taken away from it than I am with my phone. My phone, they can do whatever. I don't, whatever.
This is your work. So, this is your.
But this is the, like I do enough on this that I'm, now I've kind of divested myself a little bit, like starting after that event. Like I'm just like, I'm trying to figure out how I move to an iPad Pro. How do I, is Windows something that I can live with? I mean, it's the first time I've had this conversation about that in 20 years. Of like, I don't know if this is going to be some. I don't know if this relationship.
It's unfortunate because there aren't that many other choices. Even, if you move away from Apple, and there's a lot of things that we love Apple for and we love Mac OS for that we would be giving up. So it's a very difficult decision. I want to take a break. We'll come back. I want to talk about touch. I think that's important. And it's things that Apple didn't talk about in October and what your sense is, the Mac Mini and the Mac Pro and iMac and what your sense is for the future there. They talked about an LG 5K monitor and said, if you really want an external monitor, you should buy this, which implies that maybe they're getting at it, that they really are getting out of that business. Anyway, there's a lot more to talk about. I want to take a break, though. Everybody can relax a little bit, have a cup of tea.
And breathe.
And I'm very sympathetic because I've had, I'm going back and forth. And I, by the way, bought the 13 and the 15, but I also bought the Surface Studio. And I think we'll have the Surface Studio December 15th. We'll have the 2 new MacBooks in a couple of weeks. And I think that there's going to be an interesting thing to look at that in context with what the Surface Studio is doing. It's all very interesting, but we're going to take a break now so you can relax. Our show today brought to you by Squarespace. Now, Squarespace is a great place for you to relax and make a great website without a lot of crazy work or spending a crazy ton of money. You can make a site that uses state-of-the-art engineering with a beautiful design. They go hand in hand, and the best hosting, all at Squarespace. It's like everything you need: the perfect portfolio, a professional blog, an online store. If you're a restaurant, this is the place to make it. If you're a business of any kind, if you're just an individual, that's where I keep my blog. Sites look professionally designed because they are. They have the best designers, and you can start with these great templates. Underneath, the best engineering, so it's mobile responsive. You've got e-commerce on every site. And when Squarespace does e-commerce, they do it right. They don't make it like something hanging off the side of your website. You go to the shopping cart, it's this ugly thing. It looks like your website. It fits with your website. It's just gorgeous. If you're a developer, now, if you're not a developer, you've got all these settings and tools you can or don't have to use. It's one of those magical things where you can choose to do it as simply as possible and look great, or you can get as deep as you want. And you change fonts. They have hundreds of fonts, literally colors, page configurations. And then if you're a developer, wow, the developer platform gives you full control over the site. The HTML, the CSS, the JavaScript. You have a JSON API to output content from the CMS. You can use a base template that gives you all the functionality. Then you can lay your design on top of it, or use one of the existing templates if you want the design, but you want to have the functionality in your hands. And once you register as developer and flip the developer toggle, you can start using SFTP or Git with Squarespace. Start coding. I mean, it is this. They've thought of it all. Get a free custom domain name when you purchase an annual purchase. They do domain names now too, by the way. They have hundreds of TLDs. You can, of course, use that great Squarespace content, and it gives you a lot of additional features, shipping and so forth, inventory control. Very, very powerful. I love my Squarespace site. You will love yours, and you can try it free. Squarespace.com. Please use the offer code MacBreak to get 10% off. And, of course, show your support for MacBreak Weekly. We love them. Squarespace.com. Use the offer code MacBreak. You don't have to for the free trial, but when you buy, you'll get 10% off. Adam Engst is here from tidbits.com. Andy Ihnatko from the Chicago Sun-Times. Alex Lindsay from the Pixel Corps. Rene Ritchie from imore.com. A good conversation. And it's a conversation we're having here, but I think Apple fans all over the world are having at the same time after Apple's announcements of last week. What about touch? A number of people said, by the way, start with Steve Jobs saying, well, you're not going to do touch. Nobody wants to hold their arms out like this. And yet lots of us now have used touch on other operating systems, on other laptops and desktops, and say we like it. Apple is they would have to redesign Mac OS, so they give us the OLED touch bar. Is that enough?
I honestly think that Apple's missed the boat. I think that it made logical sense that nobody's going to want to use a computer like this and get the gorilla arms. but the thing is, I mean, now we have years of experience of people using computers. We've had years of experience with now Microsoft having desktop, laptop computers with that. And it's great. There's so many different things you can do with it. Maybe you don't want to use it instead of a mouse. You wouldn't want to have that instead with a computer that can only use that as a touch input or as a way of inputting commands. But it works really, really great. And I have to say that I really do like the touch bar. I think it's a really great idea if it's implemented well. But I really think I had this tiny little maybe unfair twinge of, remember the time when like BlackBerry made like phones that had like iPhone-like touchscreens but still had keyboards underneath them? And remember you could sort of hear this boardroom meetings like, oh, damn it, we bet on the wrong horse and now we're screwed, and it's too late because we can't now revamp the entire Hackintosh operating system so that it works with touch, whereas Windows has been revamped so well, integrates touch so well that you can make a 28-inch touchscreen like drafting table computer and it works brilliantly. So I think that I don't see the touch bar as a failure, but I do see it as an acknowledgement. Oh, dang it. Had we been able to see 5 or 6 years in the future as clearly as we were able to see it with the iPhone, we would have started integrating touch into the Hackintosh operating system because, oh dear, this is the best we can do right now.
Well, and I think that the issue is that I think everyone thinks of it as creative, and I think even to some degree Microsoft thinks of it as creative with the Studio, the Touch Studio, and so on and so forth. But I think that there are a lot of other places. My primary use for touch is not drawing. I'm not very good at drawing. My primary use is marking documents, blocking out ideas. So if I'm doing a keynote, I'm like, I want a box here, and I do it mostly on an iPad, on my iPad.
Mine is navigation and scrolling. Yep.
Yeah, sometimes it's funny because sometimes I'll see a button. And it's just natural to touch it. Or I'll scroll up and down on a
Imagine how kids are going to feel. Kids who grew up with iPads, they're going to be touch first.
And that's the real test, right? If you've been using the iPad for a while, don't you touch your laptop screen at least once or twice?
My kids have very little experience working with a regular laptop, and they are so frustrated on a pretty constant basis with the laptop because they just keep on touching the screen.
So in the lab, Apple has to have a touch version of Mac OS.
For years. It runs iOS. As far as I remember, the touch versions of Macs ran what looked like iOS.
Oh, how interesting. I guess you have to. I mean, Microsoft went through a horrific period transitioning the desktop to touch. And all the pain of Windows 8, that was 3 years of awfulness. They've kind of gone beyond that. Windows 10 is still a desktop, but it has the touch interface if you need it and want it. I think they've kind of solved the problem.
But I don't even need it to be redesigned. Like, I'm really okay.
Yeah, but the tiny touch targets are frustrating after a while.
No, but I'm saying I'm okay with using a trackpad and typing and using a mouse or whatever. And just when I just want to be able to pick up a pencil and draw on things and go, no, not this.
Sometimes
an Apple Pencil.
That's all. An Apple Pencil plus the screen is all I'm asking for, and I'll still do everything else normally. Yeah. But when you're talking about teachers, grading papers, when you're talking about CEOs looking at contracts or lawyers looking at contracts, when you're looking at people just drawing, wanting to sketch something out so they can send it to somebody, is this, we have a rock right now, which is our trackpad or whatever that we're trying to draw with, and instead of. And when you get used to the iPad, I think, the problem with the iPad for me is that I have no I/O, so I have like really no effective I/O in and out of it. And I don't know where any of the files go. Like, it's just like wherever the iPad keeps files is like magic, it's, and so.
The land of ghosts and winds.
I know. It's like, There's somewhere in there that is keeping those
the other
files,
real
but,
thing with the touch bar, though, that comes into play is that we're talking one machine. And so if this is going to become something that's core to the Mac experience, it's got to show up elsewhere. But then you run into issues with, if you're going to do Touch ID on it, then how far away can you get your Apple T1 chip and its secure enclave from the CPU and still have it be secure? So could you
very far
have an external one?
Yeah, no, they can do it. It's the same as a Touch ID verification for iPhone on Apple Pay and Safari now. It works on the same thing. So the chip generates the token, and only the token is encrypted end-to-end and shipped to OS X. Yeah. So they could do it from
So you
feet
can do
away.
it from an external keyboard.
Yep. Yeah, Magic Keyboard with a touch bar, I think we'll see pretty soon.
There's also accessibility things to at least think about. I mean, I hope that I think it's a really great idea. I think that the best application of it is not as a replacement for anything that's going on in the on-screen on-screen interface, but as an enhancement, as a sort of like a keyboard set of keyboard shortcuts, a set of, oh, well, if you happen, I know it's sort of like some of us have like extended keyboards, some of us have like normal desktop keyboards. Not all keyboards have a numeric keypad, but hey, look, I see that you do have an actual dedicated row of function keys. Great. I will attach things to this that makes things easier to use if you want to use it this way. I think that could cause some problems that I can't really understand, that I can't really anticipate right now. If that did become if Photoshop or Final Cut or iMovie became more difficult to use if you don't have a touchpad.
Rene, did you get to play with it for any length? Nobody here's really use it for very long though, right?
I was selfish and dominated as much time with it as I possibly could. It's really interesting for people who haven't heard much about it yet. Basically, the T1 chip runs an embedded version of iOS. It's similar to what the Apple Watch runs, and that's a very stripped down core. And all it does is handle the secure enclave, generate, read the fingerprint, generate the token, push it back out, and display Apple Pay on the actual touch bar itself. But the touch bar is really interesting to me, and I had no idea how I'd react to it because I'm not a huge fan of touchscreens on computers for a different reason. I have it on the Mac, on the iPad Pro, and I just find it takes my brain a few seconds to switch context back and forth. Yeah. And this I wasn't sure about either because this theoretically is better, but because it's not keys, it's display, I have to look down and I'm doing the same kind of context switching. So I'm ultimately not sure if it's going to be of that much benefit to me. But I also have a terrible memory for keyboard shortcuts. I have the basic ones hardwired into my brain just from years and years and years of repetition, but there's so many that I never use because I either am not aware of them or I forget about them. And what the the touch bar does is it takes, when you first boot it up, it shows the escape key and it shows the media controls, like almost what you get on the old function key. And you could put it into full-on function key mode if you really want to. But what it does otherwise is it takes on highly curated contextual commands for the application that you're running. And they've built it into every app that ships with OS X, as far as I can tell. It's even in Terminal. I didn't check Chess, but I wouldn't be surprised. And then it has on photos, you can actually see little photos and scrub through them. On Photoshop, you can pick your color from a palette. On Final Cut Pro, you can see your edit timeline and move around in it and adjust endpoints on it, and so on. And I do have to look at it, which I really, really don't like, but I like that it's servicing all these data detectors, data predictors, and it's sort of what we talked about with Microsoft, is that Apple's been building all these technologies, everything from watchOS to secure enclave to end-to-end encryption to passing tokens off to keychain so they can't be spoofed by developers, to all these different technologies. They come together and they can basically do a fused hybrid iOS ARM computer. And yeah, it's got a lot of people saying, well, if those touchscreen iOS Macs run on ARM, maybe Apple's waiting till it can do everything. Like, here's the brand new MacBook. Don't look under the covers. It runs ARM, it runs iOS, and it's a full touchscreen. And we've been waiting. Apple doesn't do touch. We don't believe in touch on the computer because it hasn't been done right until now. And we could have one of those dreadful moments. But this does show you when you think about a different context to bring touch to a Mac, and it did work pretty well. It's a matte finish. It feels like a keys. It doesn't feel glossy like a display. It feels exactly like the keyboard does. The Touch ID sensor is really nice. It's almost indistinguishable in the actual thing. And I'm talking way too long, Leo. I apologize.
No. You're the one who's played with it. So
you've actually used it.
I wanted frankly, I don't feel like I can weigh in on the keyboard or the touchpad until I have it and had it for a while. I don't think we'll know. It's a new user interface device.
I still don't know. It's going to take me a while.
I don't think we'll know. I will know in 6 months, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard for me to. It's easy for me to imagine really being thrilled at about to pick up the mouse because I need to dig deep into a menu to get it at a command. But fortunately, Photoshop or Word or Scrivener has thoughtfully surfaced. I bet he's going to treat. I bet he wants to know. I bet he wants to export this as an ebook right now because that's usually the context he's in right now, and surface that as an actual function button for that context. I have a hard time imagining the thing that got me a little bit puzzled during the demo was watching. Now you've got here you can scrub through the timeline of Final Cut right through here, and here's where you can here's where you've got the address bar of Safari right down here. And I'm saying, yeah, but I'm going to be looking right up here for the address bar. I mean, I don't. There's going to be a lot of wait a minute, where the hell did that element go? And now I'm curious to see how easy it will be to adapt to that. And to be fair, I mean, if you had, I can't remember what my reaction was to the mouse when I was like 10 or 12, but it might have been difficult for me to think. But I can't be looking from here for the hand to the screen to the here to the hand to the screen. Sometimes it's hard to imagine these things until they're placed in front of you.
The Safari was clever though. So when you're using Safari, it actually shows the windows, not the tab. It might have shown the tabs too. I saw the windows, and typically I don't know where my windows are. They're lost in a stack 20 deep, and I don't know which one's which. And you could scrub through and see perfectly readable because it's a Retina display. I think it's 2170 by 60. Perfectly readable versions of your web page. Quickly swipe to the one you want, let go, and then bang, it's right in front of you. And it was much faster than trying to switch. Because I did that test too. I tried to switch the old-fashioned way, and the touch bar was much faster.
One thing that did come up almost immediately afterward is, again, talking to friends of mine who do like real art stuff for a living. They use they really are good at like hand-eye coordination, where they will have like their finger literally on like the F11 key or literally on the F6 key, whatever it is, because as they're working, because that does something that is really important to them as they're working. And they were concerned about how now they don't have, if all the Mac Pros don't have physical function keys and they're all virtual. And remember that people who are complaining, I was disappointed that so many people are saying, "Oh, look, they've deleted the escape key. The escape key doesn't exist anymore." It's like, it will be there if you want it to be there. But it could still be for those people who need to not have to look down at the keyboard to make sure their finger is where they think it is on a function key. That could be a problem. So we'll find out when thousands of these ship and we see people who've been using this for a month, what adjustment needs to be made to how these things work.
This was the first Mac. I didn't know immediately whether I'd like it or not. Like usually I can tell right away. And even if it's a controversial product, I can tell if I personally like it. And this computer, the first thing is I'm going to have to spend a lot of time with this to see if I even like it or not, because I'm so entrenched in my old MacBook Pro.
Yeah, we actually, both Tanya and I have relatively old MacBooks. She has a 2011, 2011 11-inch, and I have a 2013 13-inch. And she immediately ordered one of the new MacBooks because she just needs something that's more capable. So we're going to see there. But enough of these things gave me pause that I was like, okay, we'll just wait and I'll try yours when it comes rather than just ordering a second one right away.
Well, that's
I
one
didn't order
thing
yet.
to point out. You didn't order yet, really?
No,
that's
I
one
didn't
thing
know.
to point out. I mean, I have a 2012 MacBook Pro here, and it's not out of date in any appreciable way.
No, they're not selling that one.
I mean, it's not like I feel like, oh, it's sluggish and slow and so forth. So there's a group of people that buy new MacBooks just because they want to have the new shiny MacBook every few years.
Yeah, whatever.
There's people who really need the power. Tanya probably really needs the power.
She doesn't. It's more that the 2011 11-inch is really starting to age.
It's wearing out. I mean, that's
the battery isn't lasting as well.
Out, yeah.
You know, and just in general, they get funky when they get 4 or 5 years old. I don't have a better explanation.
Somebody pasted comic book characters on my keys, and I can't. That's the reason I'm buying a new one.
That prankster.
That prankster. One of the things people started doing after this, and the conversation started going about Apple perhaps losing their way, is a video resurfaced that was Steve Jobs interviewed in the Triumph of the Nerds documentary. I think Robert X. Cringely interviewed him, in which he talked about what happens to a monopoly when they're dominant, when they're truly dominant. And some say this is what's happening today at Apple. Do you want to see that? Have you all seen that video lately? Yeah. Let me just play it. It's about a minute and a half, and it's like always nice. By the way, always nice to see Steve Jobs. And just remember, The good old days. He's sitting in front of a Next monitor, by the way. He is not at Apple at this point.
John came from PepsiCo, and they at most would change their product, once every 10 years. I mean, to them, a new product was like a new size bottle, right? So if you were a product person, you couldn't change the course of that company very much. So who influenced the success of PepsiCo? The sales and marketing people. Therefore, they were the ones that got promoted, and therefore they were the ones that ran the company. Well, for PepsiCo, that might have been okay, but it turns out the same thing can happen in technology companies that get monopolies, like, IBM and Xerox. If you were a product person at IBM or Xerox, so you make a better copy or a better computer. So what? When you have a monopoly market share, the company's not any more successful. So the people that can make the company more successful are sales and marketing people. And they end up running the companies. And the product people get driven out of the decision-making forums. And the companies forget what it means to make great products. Sort of the product sensibility and the product genius that brought them to that monopolistic position gets rotted out by people running these companies who have no conception of a good product versus a bad product. They have no conception of the craftsmanship that's required to take a good idea and turn it into a good product.
You have
and
to
they really have no feeling in their hearts, usually.
The historical context of this, because Steve is on the outs. He's at Next, not at Apple. And he's definitely talking about Apple under John Scully because the marketing salespeople were running Apple at that point. Is it germane to today's Apple?
The funniest thing is there's Brett Victor on Twitter. He's Worry Dream on Twitter. He worked in Apple prototyping for years. He's not there anymore, but as Apple releases products, he's been commenting on them. And right after the show, he said, things we prototyped years and years ago at Apple continue to trickle out. This touch bar technology is 8 years old. They started doing this 8 years ago. It was conceived, and that's when Steve Jobs was still there. Same with Force Touch trackpads. It's worth reading his Twitter stream because he's like, after a few years with computers without this technology are going to feel broken. And I don't know if that's true. I mean, some people thought that of resistive touchscreens as soon as we had the capacitive ones that had one-to-one direct manipulation. But a lot of the stuff we're seeing now is stuff that was created at Apple when Steve Jobs was there. And the people running Apple now, like Phil Schiller and Johnny Ive, are the people that Steve Jobs picked to run Apple.
Are they products
super
people?
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, Phil Schiller is a great product person. Jaws is a fantastic product person. A lot of the people who run Apple marketing are incredibly smart.
I could almost make the case that it's the opposite problem at Apple, is that the product people are in charge and getting to do what they want without
they
a lot
have
of
the
input
disagreements
from
we
marketing
have.
and sales.
They argue this, like the same arguments we have on this show, they have internally, and you'll once in a while you'll hear a remark from them that shows that, like, I think the iPad should be this. No, I think the iPad should be that. And there are continual battles fought, and once in a while you see different sides get the advantage.
Tim Cook's not a product person, though. But to his credit, especially with the reorganization, he has put the product people at the top.
Yeah, Steve wasn't logistics, so he put Tim Cook as his right-hand person.
Right, right. But Johnny Ive's a product person. He's in charge of the Apple UI across the board.
And again, I think that I just wonder whether there's this kind of a design obsession with simplicity.
It almost feels like they've gone the other way. Too much.
They just keep on going. They just keep on going down this. They just want to get rid of all these extra things, and there's a whole bunch of different things. And I get that there's a certain level of symmetry to have two USB-Cs on either end, and that's all, and we don't have to think about anything else. But I'm just not. And maybe a couple years in the future it'll even out. But it's I just feel like it might be moving a little too fast.
It's a brick. It's an aluminum brick. There are no ports. There's nothing. It's all wireless. You put this brick on your desk and it does everything.
Well, we'll see with the iPhone 8, right? I mean, I don't know if I don't believe any
Mac
rumors.
Pro, right? The next Mac Pro could be a brick that has holographic everything.
Yeah. Let's. Anybody else want to say anything about that video before we?
Only that it's an interesting comment about what big companies that have kind of monopolies over over an audience. Yeah. I mean, it was true when he said it back then, but again, it also points to how different the technology market is. That we talked about this a little bit at the beginning of the show, that there is a responsibility that Apple has to say that you can't really just say that you remember that back then when Steve came back Apple was the company saying, think different. Apple was the company that said, here's the crazy ones. And the fear is that, I don't think the reality is here yet, but the fear is that the new slogan is conform. You will use the
I've heard people say that too, that 1984 is Apple is the new 1984.
So they're not big on giving people options, and
they shouldn't be.
It's not. I'm not. Well,
do we want to go back to those days where they have that you have to 100 SKUs?
We keep coming back. I keep coming back to the idea that with every company, there's like a transaction involved. With Google, it is, I'm going to allow you to have incredible vision into who I am and what I do and what I like, but you're going to use that information to give me things that I like and that I want and make computers that are more tailored to my experience. Apple's transaction is, you are going to give up an immense amount of control. You will not get to do things the way you want to do them. You will not be able to buy the hardware you want to buy, but the other end of that transaction is that Apple is going to believe, at least, that in 2 years' time, you will be happy that you have what you have now instead of what you wanted to buy 2 years ago. So that's just a difference in philosophy. I don't know that one is necessarily better than the other, but it's a thing that people should be conscious of when they vote with their dollars.
So the thing that troubles me a little bit about the product decisions and product conversation a little bit is that this is the first new Mac at all in how long now? I mean, and
ever.
It's one, well, yeah, ever. But I mean, we're talking 18 months since the last MacBook Pros, much longer than that for the Mac Pro, and the Mac Mini. The iMac is somewhere in that range as well. That Apple actually isn't doing very much on the product side for the Mac. And what they seem to be doing is keeping old stuff around to provide what choices there are. You want a cheaper version? Oh, well, you can still buy the 13-inch MacBook Air. Who cares? It's old, and so that's how they're providing.
Are they still selling the Air? I wonder.
The 13-inch only.
13-inch. The 13. They dropped the 11, and they dropped the 2012 MacBook Pro with SuperDrive.
No more
Sorry,
SuperDrive.
college kids.
Yeah.
But they didn't say anything about the Air. I kind of got the feeling the new MacBook Pro, the low-end MacBook Pro, was an Air replacement. Do you think they're going to keep making the 13-inch MacBook?
They didn't drop it. And so you end up with this very, very weird lineup. I mean, if you actually walk in and say, I want a Mac laptop, you're kind of going in clean, and you would look at this. I actually have a list in Tibbet somewhere. It's like 8 SKUs, and at the base models, and it's this dizzying array of possible, this one's faster, this one's smaller, this one's lighter, this one has more ports, that one is newer ports, this one, it's
used
crazy.
To be you could just say, how much you have to spend? Okay, that's the one for you. It was a continuum along a price line.
Good, better, best.
Yeah. I think they keep the Air alive because it's the only Mac you can get for $999.
They can't make these Macs cheap enough, and as soon as they can make one of these for $899, $999, then those will go away.
Right. How about the Mini? Is that what's going to happen to the Mini?
Spring,
you think?
Spring. Yeah. I'm sad they didn't do it now.
It's an important product?
It's such an important computer for them. It's the least expensive entry point into the Mac. It's such a practical machine for so many homes and so many businesses and so many schools. I actually haven't seen the breakout of the recent sales of the the Mac Mini, but I'd be surprised if even now, with barring an update recently, it's a really, really surprisingly a dull gray box, but a very spectacular performer.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a lot
of
Mac Minis. Doing a lot of basic tasks and being able to have them rack mountable and all those other things are things that we use them a lot for. And I
bring back quad core.
Yeah, I'm actually not budgeting for it yet, but thinking about 2017, I might actually buy a really good Mac Mini. Particularly thinking that I'm probably going to have some money available from my potential MacBook budget.
Boycott.
I'll use my own damn keyboard with it.
Mac Pro. Is it dead? Will it
be spring?
Also, do you think they'll update it?
Yeah, I mean, I really wish they'd done all this. I don't think they'll. I mean, they barely revved this design. I really wish they would have done all this earlier. I think that they wish they could have done this earlier, and I don't know why the desktops are pushed out till spring.
What's holding them up? Intel?
I think, at this point, and it's a terrible answer, but I think at this point, iOS takes up, like, the iPhone absolutely has to ship on time. There is no world for Apple where that iPhone is not ready in September, and anything that has to be moved around that will get moved around that. And it's like you'll think we have a new engineer, we can assign him to work on the Mac thing, but it's no, new engineer, please go push that as fast as you possibly can. So all the resources they have get distributed in terms of the importance of that business. And it's not that the Mac is unimportant, it's just relative to where Apple makes all of its money, it is not as important as getting the iPhone. I mean, they didn't even introduce new iPads this year, in getting that iPhone out in September.
I think Rene is absolutely correct. And that's the thing that people really, particularly longtime Mac users, have trouble remembering is Apple is the iPhone company at this point. It's all iPhone all the time. And it feels as though, I mean, we know that Apple has tens of thousands of employees. Couldn't they be both? Couldn't they have, the Mac company and the iPhone company and be able to ship both of them on time? And I think partly things are integrated so deeply with iOS and Mac OS now that it's hard. And I also think that Apple has they're really good at focus, which is now showing its potential liability.
Myopia.
So that now they really have to focus on the iPhone because that's where all the money is. And, they may have 5,000 people working on the Mac, who knows? But they can't break free of the iPhone laser focus that the executives and the sales and the marketing and the manufacturing, everyone has to have. So that it really feels to me like the Mac is getting pushed to the side time and time again to make sure, as Rene says, September comes, a new iPhone ships.
Can you imagine if the iPhone was delayed till March?
Again, as a pro user, I wish they would have just pushed it further aside and just said, we're just going to give you some updates. To this.
They could have just said, we're going to do something.
No. If they just freshened up the chips, I think a lot of people that are upset would have been happy. Just make it a little faster than it was before, and I'll upgrade my leases and call it a day. They
used to speed bump things more often. You just they wouldn't even announce it. You just boom, there's a new speed bump.
They skipped the Skylake bump because they wouldn't. So there's a few things. Some people were upset that there's not Kaby Lake in this computer, for example. But Kaby Lake was just announced. It's just starting to ship. It's not the right chip for Apple. And Apple, once it gets the chip, they spend months. They spent months on Skylake making sure not only does it sleep properly and wake up properly, but now it actually boots when you open the lid. And all that stuff takes a lot of work with them and Intel. And my understanding is that just bumping it to Skylake back in January, you would have gotten a result similar to what drove Paul Thurrott mad on the Surface, and they weren't tolerant of that.
Me too. 8 months with the Surface Book, and it took them forever, Microsoft forever, to get the Surface Book to handle power properly. It does,
and nobody
now.
Trusts Kaby Lake now, so they don't want to just put it in and trust.
I don't have as much problem with them not putting Kaby Lake in there at all. I don't think that's a big issue.
No, I don't think. I'm just saying that I don't. When was the last Apple release that they released something where we really just wished that they had? There's so many people, maybe not all of us, but so many people just wish they had just done a minor update and not done an event. I mean, I just can't remember the last time that I had that impression. Where I just wish they'd made it a little faster, made it, bumped a couple little things, but I didn't need them to do anything significant to it.
They haven't really been doing the little speed bumps so much. Yeah. They did it to the MacBook, I guess.
The iMac got a little speed bump.
The
iMac did, but Mac Mini hasn't seen one in ages.
No, and it really should. I mean, because they made the Mac Mini an appliance as well, so you get the same responsibility. If you're going to seal it, your job is to then update it for me.
Right.
Well, and now I'm afraid that we're going to get a Mac Mini with 4 USB-C connections.
And 6 USB-C connections.
USB-C and 1 future, Alex. Get used to it.
Oh yeah, I just think there's
the SSD is super fast on. One of the things that blows me away every time is just how fast they've gotten SSD really technology. Fast, As little as Intel has pushed, pure performance, this SSD at times is twice as fast for me, at least, as last year's model, which is I didn't think would be true.
I was surprised to see Tim or Phil, I guess it was Phil, talk about a 4 or 5K display from LG and recommend it. Does that confirm that they're not going to make any more cinema displays?
They worked with LG on this. They worked with LG to make this the next generation Thunderbolt display.
I tried to buy one, and it wasn't available yet. I'm not sure when it'll be available.
The 5K is in December.
Yeah.
Okay.
They no longer believe you.
I do think that Apple could make things a lot easier for themselves and the users if they decided to be a little bit more open about future plans. I'm not talking about show me the future car 5 years before you even decide if you're going to build it or not, but at least say that be cognizant of the fact that we haven't said anything about the Mac Mini in 3.8 years. And we're going to make 10 minutes in the next keynote or the next event, basically just to talk about the direction for the Mac Mini, just to say that yes, we are aware we still sell these things. We still think it's a viable product. We're not going to show you the case design, not going to show you the direction, but at least remind us that you know that you still make this, and don't make me feel like an idiot for maybe wanting to buy one today or maybe wanting to buy one next year, because right now it's reasonable for certain people to think that I think that I want to buy a Mac Mini, but I'm going to hold off because I don't know if Apple's going to cancel it or decide to just basically let it put it on the boat, push the boat out to sea, wave at grandma and grandpa and say they had a good long life. Now go off to Valhalla with the both of you.
Alex,
like
you know
your third kid hasn't.
You should start pushing for not Apple to open source OS 10, but Adobe to make their Creative Cloud available on Linux. No, I'm serious. Because I think, okay, here's the problem is that you have, it's Apple's way or the highway. Let's face it. We know that. And so you have three choices. You can get a Windows PC and learn to love Windows 10. Hard for Mac users, hard for me. You could Hackintosh it. That's still viable, right? Illegal. And certainly nobody like you is going to do that. Right. But somebody who's an enthusiast, you can run.
We'll swear by it.
Right. I mean, because then I can get 100 gigs of RAM. I can get whatever I want. And build my own PC and then put OS 10 on it, and it works with Sierra. I mean, there's lots of disadvantages, but it's actually gotten better, not worse. Or you can say, I'm going to get a PC with all the bells and whistles, and I'm going to go the legal route. I'm going to put Linux on it, some form of Linux on it. But what's missing there, frankly, the only thing that's missing there is the desktop apps that you've come to love on Windows and Mac, chief of which is Creative Cloud.
Yeah, I mean, Creative Cloud's part of it. I mean, I think there's a lot of Adobe users also that would probably, there's a lot of talk about whether we're going to stay.
And I know there's Darktable Linux. People are going to email me and say there's Darktable and there's the GIMP. But
there's GIMP.
If I could get Photoshop and Lightroom on Linux, and I think it's different for everybody. I don't know why developers are bitching about the new MacBook Pros, because just get you can get the amazing Linux box. It doesn't even have to be a machine made for Linux. Get a Dell XPS 15, incredible hardware, load it up, and then put Linux on it, and you'll be
it's
very,
the
very
iOS
happy.
devs. They have no choice.
Oh yeah, they want Xcode, right? Okay.
Yeah.
There's those. So those are the people who are most.
And they want to plug in their phones every day, and now they can't without buying an extra cable. So they're double screwed.
Yeah. There's a lot of peripherals and all kinds of other stuff that we would need to sort out. I mean, we do use a lot of Linux boxes, but we're not used to having them. I don't know if any of them have an interface.
So really, the only really viable option is Windows 10.
Yeah, for us, I mean, I think that would be the case. I mean, all the Linux boxes we have, everyone just command lines into them and does what we need to do. I don't think we've installed a interface to
I use
Linux
Linux on the desktop all the time. I put it on most of my Windows laptops because I can't bear Windows 10, and I'm very happy with it. But it's mostly because I have a browser and an email client. Not even a very good email client, unfortunately. There isn't really a great one.
Elm.
Yeah, I use Mutt. But
Elm and Lynx.
Thunderbird is basically
Emacs not good enough for you, Mr. Big Shot, Mr. Fancy Lad.
I use Mutt and Emacs, my friend. Now I have you. All right. Anyway, enough of that. But that's the issue, and look at it. The reason Apple people are so vociferous about this is those are the choices, and we would like to stay on the platform. I love OS 10. I love Mac OS, and frankly, I love Mac hardware.
But isn't that a big problem for Apple? Is that you have all these people who literally have Rich Stevens. I was with Apple before Apple was doomed T-shirts, and now they feel disenfranchised by Apple. They feel like they stuck with them through thick and thin, and now their needs are not being met by the company that they've spent decades loving. And that might sound like, oh, Apple's moving on to mainstream, and we saw that earlier. Like Apple's making iOS devices are hundreds of millions of customers, and now Microsoft is going to the niche because that's what you do when you want to extract value from a smaller marketplace. But you have all these people who've loved Apple for so long, who vocally supported it, who are all over Twitter evangelizing it and and pushing it, and now they feel like they've been abandoned, and that could be a big problem. Even if it's not a significant part of your revenue anymore, it could still be a significant part of the entire brand identity.
Yeah, part of it is, and I'm sure we don't need to open up hour 4 of the show, but part of it in the back of my mind is that I have a picture in my mind of what a truly great company is capable of, and oftentimes with decisions like this, I see Apple. They don't want to do anything that they feel will really put themselves out. They're not going to. It would be harder for them to make a product that is not not owing to their nature, but a great company. Sometimes they have to swing at a pitch that maybe is a little bit trash because they got to defend the plate. That's a bad analogy. What I mean is that I keep coming back to Bang & Olufsen. Everything they make is brilliant. They're incredibly well designed, really innovative. They have TV screens, like 800-inch TV screens that will tilt and pivot on their own like motors to make sure that they're aiming towards you at the right time. But who do you know who has a Bang & Olufsen TV? They're making a great living, high profit margin, highly designed machines, but they're not a great company in that they know how to make that, but they don't know how to make a TV set for actual normal people. So it bothers me if they decide that we're gonna be making technology only for people who can afford super luxury brands and only for people who are willing to sacrifice what they want for what we feel is the right choice for us to make right now. So
that's really what's happening. Is Apple has chosen a path for itself that's completely reasonable, highly profitable. It's good business. But it inevitably cuts some of its users, some of its most passionate and loyal users off. I think that's really what's happening. I mean, we can argue about it, and maybe they'll prove me wrong in the spring. But I think that's what's happening.
Nobody likes to see a great relationship end.
Yeah, it's hard. Breaking up is hard to do.
I will admit there is a certain emotional component to this. I can't be in a position where my main computer is not a Mac. I would hate for that to happen. And that actually was part of my thinking when I switched to Android. I had to say, no, you're holding on to a relationship. You're in love with the memories of how good this relationship used to be. You're not in love with how good this relationship is right now. You have grown apart. Yeah. and now here is Android, who really wants to be the sort of person that you want to be in relationship with right now. So that could be part of it.
Yeah, but I look at the field out there, and I'm not. There's nothing. It's a bleak prospect. That's all.
It's hard. I mean, like
I might
Final
be
Cut
single
Pro,
for a while. I don't know.
As much as Final Cut Pro disenfranchised a lot of pro editors, it allowed me to do a 3-camera shoot. Right. It took me 15 minutes to learn it, 5 minutes to do it, and I could never do that before.
Right.
So.
Right. Hey, one thing Apple is moving along with, and we may have just had the last Apple event at the old campus. New drone footage. It's the beginning of the month. Can you believe it's November? November 1st. We have new drone footage from the 2 big drone guys. Let's take a look at the Apple campus as of now. And they're starting to put in trees. The solar roof is done.
Still no anti-aircraft battalions.
I bet they have sonic impellers.
T-shirt cannon filled with nets, the gladiator nets.
This is the garage. The garage has solar all over it, which is pretty amazing. They've started to move some of the construction cranes out. It's now, it's. They say the solar installation is about half done. Sure looks like it's more than half done. Can you imagine the capacity? Look at all those panels. Amazing.
If they could just focus all those solar rays into one laser beam.
Still only 16 gigabytes of RAM, though.
The pyramid in the middle, which will be, of course, where they'll put Tim Cook's bones. I don't know what they're going to do. Is that a park, or is that just dirt that's still there?
Can you imagine if Tim Cook called up Johnny and asked where his corner office was, even just as a troll? I just asked for one thing. Where's my corner office?
Where's my corner office? The separate R&D facility, that's where the pirate flag will go up. And, of course, no one can get in there without a very special kind of card key, I imagine. Although, don't you think there's underground passages to all of this stuff?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I feel as though the route to the auditorium, there are underground passages, like how they get Goofy and Mickey from the dressing rooms to
Mario Kart
cast members.
I think it's Mario Kart.
There's the tunnel to the 11,000 space parking garage, underground parking garage. That's pretty remarkable.
There's the Apple remote.
There's a giant Apple remote.
No, that's dongle storage.
The dongle storage facility.
a dongle remote to remote
It
control
gives
all
you a
your
sense of
dongles.
how big this is when you see the maintenance facility, which is one of the smallest buildings on the property.
Yeah.
That this thing is massive.
They haven't
And it still
filled up the
won't
lake
fit.
yet.
The round roof, of course, is the entrance to the
Incinerator.
the theater, the new Apple showplace, where the next, I presume, the spring, if they have a spring event. Certainly,
That's what they told us, Leo.
Yeah.
They said it was a media thing, but it's an incinerator.
It's an incinerator.
They have plants that can make both Soylent red, yellow, and green.
Look at did you see
all
the
in the
size,
same facility.
the size of the security kiosk? Holy cow! Look at that. Most vehicles will be housed in the two main garages.
And it's still not big enough for Apple staff, which is amazing to me.
300 car charging stations. That seems woefully inadequate for 11,000 people.
They have
That seemed
14,000
pretty-
phone support people.
Oh, Eddie
It's
Q
a
is
little
getting
bit
infinite
obvious.
loop. Are
But
they
that's-
going to
but
have
that's-
pneumatic tubes?
That's the auditorium. So you see underground,
that's
like
the
how
entrance,
the seats. Well, also you can see, like, it hasn't been covered with dirt yet, but you can see like the bank seats
Right.
going in, and also look in the back. You can see like the lake that has not been filled in yet.
There's a lake.
So
wow.
there should be
Garden,
kayaking. There should be
pond,
RC boats.
Outdoor dining. Oh my gosh. Oh,
That's
my
where
gosh.
they'll be hunting humans. They have a special enclosure.
This is the new Hunger
Most
Games
dangerous game.
Pavilion. Yeah.
That's where the dinosaurs are going to live.
All right. That's the Matthew Roberts
Okay.
video.
We honestly
Apple
think
Pop.
this is the most dangerous game we've ever made.
Really does look beautiful. And
17% thinner than our
I
last
have
game.
to say, the first event they have there, I am going to definitely lobby for the for an invitation to. I would really like to get inside a little bit. So let's take a break. I shouldn't say that. Everybody satisfied? We've chewed on this long enough.
We're good. Apple's doomed.
Yeah.
No reason for hope.
I mean,
no
if we
reason
have
for-
half an hour, I'd love to hear Alex's opinion on the TV.app, but I don't know if we have that.
You know, I did not bring that up, and I'll tell you why. Apple often does this. They announce an app like the Cards app that nobody ever uses and just goes away a year or two later, and I would bet that's exactly what happens to this TV
Well, it's no
app.
Netflix support, right?
In theory, the premise is good, which is think about how you watch TV, and maybe this is a dying thing, but in my day, when people, they would sit down and they would turn on the TV and then they would surf till they found something they wanted to watch. So the new Apple TV app is really that. You open that up when you turn on your TV, and that shows you all the things you can watch. And so it's a little more like the normal TV watching experience, but because it lacks things like Amazon and Netflix, I think it's a non-starter. I think it's
because that's not Apple's. That's not under Apple's control.
I understand.
Amazon wants to withhold rights, so it's such a
no.
tough
I'm
thing
not
to
blaming
crack.
Apple. I'm just saying.
Oh no, I'm saying that it does mean that if it has to, an app like this has to present such a brilliant solution the first two or three, second, and third time you use it. If you don't find yourself instinctively now thinking, oh, I want to watch TV, I'll launch this app. But instead you start thinking, am I in the mood for YouTube? Am I in the mood for Hulu? Am I in the mood for Netflix? Which is how I interact with the apps on all my devices. Then it may as well not be there, but it'll be there for people who like it.
It really feels more like Apple's attempt to grab your attention, to grab your, to watch what you're doing, than something that's going to be useful to you.
And I think they're trying lots of stuff.
It's a nut that they're trying to crack, and I don't think they figured out how to crack it yet. I think that I believe that this year is the kind of the inflection point between TV and online video. I mean, we've all been doing online video for a long time, but I think that there's something that it's hard for me to put any stats to it, but you can feel it when you look at the drop in the NFL. You look at the pickup of, the different live services, that I think that there's this point where things are pulling away. And I think one of the things that I do think Apple does need to get sorted soon is the 4K, because 4K allows the online video to actually make TV small. And when TV gets small, then TV's never going to be able to go to 4K in any significant way, because they're never going to have the revenue that they used to have that they spent on getting to HD. And so they're in, I don't know, never, but
that's a really interesting point, isn't it? With diminishing revenues, they're not going to have the chance. It's a vicious circle in the wrong direction.
When you have the other side of that is just bits. YouTube decides they want to supply more bits, or Apple decides they want more bits. Amazon's already supplying more bits, and so is Netflix. And so, online video is about to become the big screen. Smaller than the mid screen. Smaller than theater, but bigger than TV. And once TV is considered over and over and over again to be the small screen, and you're looking at TV manufacturers, they're going to want to push this because they want to sell you 4K TVs. as TV kind of goes that direction, and as a lot of us, I don't know where most of these TV shows live anymore. I don't know what broadcaster makes the different shows that I watch. I just know that I hold up Siri and I
want
go,
a show.
I want to play this song.
Yeah.
I want to play this episode or whatever. And so I don't think that browsing.
It's the analog of what's happened to newspapers. You don't go to a website for a newspaper or for an online blog anymore. You look article by article, and you're using something like Twitter. To find it.
And so I think that this Apple's trying to figure it out. I mean, I think that. I think that it's going to be hard. I think that their best bet, if they really want to crack this, is to do something outrageous, like buy Disney. You get ABC, you get Marvel, you get ESPN, you get all of those things. And Apple has the cash to do it. And if they bought something like Disney and just sucked it in, they'd have all the things that they needed to prove their model. And without that, they're screwed. So like they're not going to ever get in. But if they do that, they basically take a crowbar and a sledgehammer and just slam it into it. I mean, there'd probably be they don't own a majority of that market. I think that antitrust would be difficult. I think they could probably get through that. And but they have to own a bunch of these bits of the market to prove that it's a good idea, because no one else is going to willingly give it to them.
Time Warner or Netflix.
Time Warner's available. Yeah. No, I have to say at this point, in a way, Chromecast has a better story than the Apple TV, because at least you can go to one device, find what you want, and then send it to your TV. If Chromecast were on more apps, it'd be better, but it's on enough apps that your phone becomes the unified app, because you can pick what you want there. Anyway, let's take a break, and we're going to give you a chance, all four of you, to do your picks of the week. So prepare. I shall start with my pick, in a way, Tracker. I think the Tracker is just the bestest thing, because I lose my keys a lot. I don't lose them. I misplace them. I have them. They're here somewhere. I just don't know where. That was until I put the little tracker on my keychain. And by the way, I then clipped my keychain into my handbag. What do I call that? Man bag. My briefcase.
Indiana Jones satchel.
My satchel. And that way, I'm killing two birds with one stone. Of course, you can have up to 10 trackers on your app, so you can have the remote controls on there if you want. I hear people starting to put them in luggage as well. The Tracker is about the size of a quarter. It's lighter than a quarter. It's anodized aluminum. It's very thin. Light enough, thin enough, small enough that you could actually use it for a pet tag. It's about the size of a pet tag. Engrave it with Fido's name and number. Put it in their waterproof case. You'll never lose your pet again. And by the way, you can't get customized laser engraving or their new really cool UV silk screening on this. That's what we did here. We got the MacBreak Weekly album art on our Tracker. And the Tracker is one of the few Bluetooth tracking devices, the only one I know of, that you don't throw out when your battery wears out. That's just nuts. That's what a waste that is. The Tracker, it's got a new battery. You just put a battery in there. It's using Bluetooth LE. The battery lasts about a year. There are those little coin-sized batteries you can get at any drugstore. And I like that. I don't like the idea of throwing out my Tracker just because its battery is used up. It works with iOS or Android. You can customize two-way separation alerts too. So if you're one of those people that tends to leave your phone behind as much as you leave your keys, you can have it beep. The Tracker will beep at you when your phone gets out of range, and your phone will beep at you when your keys get out of your Tracker gets out of range. But the best part about the Tracker, I think, is their crowd GPS network. There are now 3.5 million trackers out there. They have sold them like crazy. I think the guy told me they were doing, 100,000 a month now, something like that. Some huge number. I take credit for that, by the way. And the nice thing is, look at that map. It's getting pretty. It's going to be all blue pretty soon. The nice thing is, do the slider so you can see how the Tracker network has grown, because it's just grown tremendously over the last few months. And that means there are more and more, you see those hot spots? That means there's trackers everywhere. There are more and more places. So here's what happens. You pair it to your phone. You leave your keys. Let's say I leave my keys on the counter of a drive-in restaurant in Alamogordo, New Mexico. And I drive home. Well, now, as soon as I get more than 100 feet out of range, my phone doesn't know where it is. It can tell me where it saw it last. And as long as nobody moves those keys, I know where they are. But let's say then somebody picks up the keys by accident, the trucker takes off, and he drives to Fort Collins, Colorado. Well, now, anytime somebody with the tracker software running on their phone walks by my keys, the software goes, hey, I see Leo's keys, and sends me a note. And now my map is updated on my phone. It says, your keys were last seen in Fort Collins, Colorado. This is awesome. The Tracker. Go to thetracker.com, and you will, just get a bunch of them. You never want to lose anything again. If you enter the promo code MacBreak, you're going to get a free Tracker Bravo with your order. Yeah, free. Thetracker.com, promo code MacBreak. When I get excited about something, I tend to buy a lot of them and put them everywhere, and I got trackers everywhere. Everywhere. But I know where everything is now. Thetracker.com, promo code MacBreak. Time for and we thank him, by the way, for supporting MacBreak Weekly. Our picks of the week. Let's start with Adam Engst, all the way on the left there. What do you got for us, Adam?
Well, you actually sort of got a little bit into the same area. I've been playing a little bit with these things called wireless sensor tags. Just little kind of a square white plastic.
Are those beacons?
No, they're not beacons. I actually have some of those too, which I could show you, but I'm not showing them today. But what the wireless sensor tags are is they do motion detection, temperature sensing, and humidity and things like that. And I got them because we have a big 20 cubic foot chest freezer in our garage, which is now 15, 16 years old. And also because this summer we were having trouble with our refrigerator not closing properly. And yeah, so it's basically that. And so you just tell it what range you want to keep your device in. And if it goes out of that range, it alerts your iPhone.
Oh, that's cool.
And
so if your fridge starts to warm up, it says, hey, somebody left the door open.
And because it's actually giving you this nice chart of the temperature all the time, you can actually see, oh, maybe I should be turning my fridge down or up, as the case may be, because it's, it should be, freezer should be, hovering around 0 degrees, and look, mine's at actually 10 or 15, which keeps stuff frozen, but not ideal. Or maybe I'm got it down at -20. I should really be not wasting so much power. So cute little device. The only trick I had in setting it up was you've got to punch a hole through your firewall, do a port map.
Yeah, because it can't be Bluetooth because it says 700 feet range.
No.
Wi-Fi?
It's proprietary.
Oh,
okay. And so basically it just talks with its own thing, but that way it can get, work on the inside of a freezer in the garage outside. Right. And so, so that works, and it works brilliantly. The app is, it's not super sleek, but that's because it has so many features in terms of, setting your notification levels and, tell me if it changes every 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, hour, 4 hours, that kind of stuff. So it's very, very configurable and customizable. And I was actually pretty shocked to see it's like the inner life of my refrigerator. When it's turned on again. It's gotten cold, and so it was kind of fun to get the alerts. I've been tweaking the settings so that it doesn't alert me nearly as much now. But even still, I'm like, whoa, something happened. I go check it out, and I haven't yet had a failure. I'm sort of waiting for like the fridge to not get closed or something to go wrong so that I'm like, whoa, it saved me. But it hasn't had to do that yet.
And the app is the Kumo app, and
the app is there's sort of two things. There's the main app, and then they have these things called Kumo apps, which I haven't really played with, but they seem to be more specific sets of notifications. Like if this is true and this is true and this is true, then do this other thing.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And I think you can use it with IFTTT as well. I haven't played with that yet.
So these are really another Internet of Things kind of a device. Yeah.
And they're not HomeKit. I asked the company, and they made some kind of pained noises about how Apple just charges way too much for them to bother with HomeKit support. But the app works perfectly. The sensors work perfectly. And I forgot how expensive they were exactly, but
I can tell you, I have the price list right here.
Yeah.
So you have to get the Tag Manager, right? That's the base station. That's $50.
That's the base station, and then you get I think I just got the $29 tags.
They have a variety of different sensors for motion, for water, and then temperature and humidity.
Cool. It is really cool when you're traveling somewhere and your refrigerator tells you that it's gotten a little warm. There's not much you can do about it right then and there personally, but if it was the freezer outside and it was getting a little warm, I could call a neighbor and say, okay, this is really terrible. Could you please go put, blankets on it and, start making plans for getting a replacement.
Cool. WirelessTag.net. WirelessTag.net. Very interesting. Well, now let's see. If you Adam's done, so it's Alex Lindsay's turn. We haven't had a pick from you in a long time. I hope it's a really expensive one.
No, I'm going easy. I'm going easy on everybody.
Man.
So yeah, so it's but it's still a little pro tip here. So we use a lot of these little SSDs. We kind of use them like tape, for on the road. So almost all of our recorders use them, and even when I'm editing, I simply just plug those into my laptop and edit off of those because they're so much faster than dealing with other things. So we have
a few ourselves. We use these to record the shows. In fact, these are little cartridges from our ingest station. Can you believe that we now sneakernet our shows? Basically, we record them on SSDs. And
floppy drives got a lot more interesting, didn't they?
Zip drive.
Bring them down to the hall of the editor. But it's actually faster. The bandwidth is better.
I mean, this is like one of a couple of the stacks that we have.
Wow. Wow.
So
wow.
And they're and they all have little like what angle they were, because we'll have a bunch of ISOs and stuff that we're recording from an event. And anyway, so transferring all that data or getting to the program to do a fast turn or whatever becomes a challenge. And so we have, we've been using these Thunderbolt. I think I've talked about them before, these Thunderbolt ones, but we wanted something a little cheaper that we could actually, because when you send these to clients, even though we know what they're useful for, they're like, I don't understand, So we got these little, and there, I think a couple people make them, but the one specifically that we use are these little Sabrent. And what these are is just USB 3 to SSD. They're $10, and you just plug them in. They're very raw, and we literally just plug them in. We literally just ship these like if we ship something to somebody, it's like just here's the little connector that you need for your USB, whatever. And if you buy like these 120s, I don't know how big this one is. This one's bigger, probably. This is a 500, but if you take a little 120 gig drive, it costs less than a lot of the hard drives used to, but it's 120 gigs. You can put a ProRes file on it and send it to somebody and not invest a lot in how they're going to connect to it. So anyway, it's a cheap little
really cool,
useful.
$10 for that adapter, and you can just plug in your drive to any USB port. They have to make a Type-C one, though.
Yes.
Rene, Ritchie, your pick of the week.
I've got two. So the first one is the new Mac Pro, but a surprising version of it. And that is the stripped down version with the only two ports on the side. On the other side, all you'll find, there's still a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack just to mess with you. Still right there. So total courage under fire. So this one is sort of intended. Let me just back up a little bit. Is sort of intended, and it actually boots up when you open it, which is pretty nifty.
That's the new thing. No more bong?
No, because now you can no longer predict when it's booting up, and they didn't want to bong people unexpectedly. Right. I think you can restore it in settings.
Yeah, there's a terminal command to restore it.
By default, it will not bong in the middle of your broadcast. The interesting thing about this is, for years, people have wanted a Retina MacBook Air, but for a variety of reasons, the MacBook Air platform was just never well suited for the technology you'd need to go Retina. So what Apple did was, instead of making a 14-inch MacBook, and we can debate the merits of that at some point, they made a lower-end version of the MacBook Pro that is essentially a MacBook Air with a Retina display. It's the same sort of thin, light device that you'd want in a MacBook Air, easy to travel with, full metal design. It's got two USB-C / Thunderbolt 3 ports instead of 4, but they're the full-speed ports. It does not have the magic does not have the touch bar, but does have the function key row. So if you love the escape key, if you love your physical tactile buttons there, you have those. It starts at $500 more than the MacBook Air, and it is a really good machine. I've been using it for the last 4 days, and I used a MacBook Air, a 13-inch MacBook Air for years, and I really loved that machine. And even though it was highly constrained, just traveling all the time and having to cover events and trade shows and conferences, it was super convenient. And this sort of has that vibe to me, where it has constraints, but I know them and I'm willing to sort of make those concessions because of the other things that I do. But because we don't live in the future yet, and because Microsoft, as well as having their own event, they were on stage at Apple's event showing off the wonderful touch bar integration for the Microsoft apps. They sort of work well together. So I looked at the Microsoft Hub, the Microsoft Display Hub, which they built for their Lumia phones, but our Windows Central team recommended highly for just a USB-C to sort of multi-port adapter.
Oh.
Mine hasn't arrived yet, but it's $99. Oh. Does USB-C in. It has display out, a USB 2 out. Again, $99. It looks fine. It's sort of like the same sort of space gray color the MacBook is. So I figure if Microsoft really works this well with everybody, why can't it work this well with that MacBook Pro?
Yeah. We'll all be
so
buying docks of
HDMI.
one kind or another, but that's nice.
And it's easy to travel with.
Yeah. What's the battery life like on that new MacBook Pro?
So I've only had it for 4 days, and I've only had to charge it twice. So it's lasted. I mean, Apple's pretty conservative now with their battery life tests. They do a lot of real-world testing. It's not as bad as phones where we're using Snapchat and Pokemon Go and Facebook all the time, and those kill batteries. But this does not have discrete graphics either, so it's not getting the drain that a discrete graphics chip would. So it lasted me, I think, 12 hours the first time I used it, and so far I think it's 4 or 5 hours.
And the keyboard really is the same as the MacBook, right?
Yeah, I've said so. It's next generation domes, next generation butterflies. If you hate the MacBook keyboard, you're going to hate this one. If you like the MacBook keyboard, this is a little better because it just feels. And I'm having a hard because I'm a really terrible typist. Not in terms like I can type fast, obviously, but I don't understand. It's like music. I enjoy listening to it, but I understand nothing about it. So to me, it feels about the same. I'm fine with it, but I know it drives some people mad.
I'll find out. I spent an awful lot of money on a top-of-the-line 15-inch, and if I can't type on it, I'm going to be very unhappy.
You just get the external keyboard from Microsoft.
You might see me doing that, yeah. Andy Ihnatko, wrap it up for us. I should mention just briefly, consider the source. It's the New York Post, but according to the Post, there's some pressure now on Apple to buy Time Warner. This is from loopinsight.com. Goldman Sachs is trying to persuade Apple to make a rival bid for Time Warner. Of course, as you know, AT&T is trying to acquire it. Cook's companies expressed interest in buying Time Warner in the recent past, and there's some belief that, judging from his comments this week, he will not let AT&T carry the day. So, you know what? You might have nailed that one.
But it's DC Comics, not Marvel. I think what Alex is right. The heart wants what the heart wants.
It wants Lucas. Andy Ihnatko.
Star Wars.
Andy Ihnatko.
There's I'll stay out of it. I said my piece. I think Disney's the right one for them to buy if they're going to buy something.
They have very close ties to Disney, of course, as well.
Well, they get sports. They get they get sports with ESPN. They get a variety of broadcasts. They get Marvel. They get Lucasfilm. They get if they want to go to EDU, there's a whole bunch of things they could cross over with that. They in addition to that, there's a lot of R&D you could do with Bluetooth.
I say buy both. Then you get Game of Thrones and Star Wars, and I can't wait for the Game of Thrones Star Wars mashup next Christmas, 2017.
Superman versus Captain America next year.
They should buy them both, put them in a mayonnaise jar, and then let them fight until one of them lives.
Dijonnaise. You'll just make it Dijonnaise.
Thor versus the Mountain.
Yeah, now you're talking. Andy Ihnatko, your pick of the week.
Mine is kind of relevant to people. It's not technologically, but it's relevant to people who have to spend a lot of time at their desks being annoyed by computers and stuff. There's a product category I've really loved all my life, but only like 3 weeks ago, and I realized the name of the category is fidgets. These are like things that you hold in your hand that you just basically sort of fidget with your fingers, and you burns off like excess energy or excess boredom. If you remember the Kane mutiny of how
I was told the strawberries were in inflation.
He'd have like two like big steel ball bearings. They'd be like sort of clacking his hands as just something to do with his fingers. And so this is this great company called Fidgetopia. When I wanted to give them money, if only because for a great name. And they make these really great. I'm going to move Crane Cam 3000, and I bought like a bunch of their fidgets, and they're so cool. This is their bike chain fidget, and all it does is this: you just hold it in your hand, and you can just like do this or like do this with it. And you're not looking at your hands. It's just that you're waiting for a train, and it's not enough of a long wait for you to like get something out to read or get an email
Kids,
to do.
if you're on the spectrum, you'll love Fidgetopia.
This is actually a lot of these things are actually like almost prescribed for kids who are on the autism spectrum, but they're just kind of fun things to have. This is the Vortex.
That's the one I want. Look at that.
Chainless. It's basically just a knot of like stainless steel links. It is satisfyingly like heavy and chunky in your hand. And I had to move Crane Cam 3000 to show you how it works, because all you do is that you can just sort of like flip these little things from one part of the knot to the other in your hand. And it's just very, very satisfying. If you can't like carry like a cat or a puppy with you to pet all day long wherever you go, this is like sort of the same thing. It gives you like that sort of like slight de-stressing thing. I don't want to overstate this. It's not like I'm like filled with anger and hostility and violence every moment of my life, but there's just something, there's that extra like 1% of stress that like gets burned off when you just have this thing to just like fiddle with in your hand. I didn't I used to have I want to take you back to my days as an undergrad, where my roommate had a collection of butterfly knives. This is much
better than butterfly knives.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. But I remember like long nights in the computing center when I had to use like the supercomputer and the mainframes to write like this code that took a long time to compile and print. And I would just have this butterfly knife in my hand. I would just go flick, 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 flick. Flick, 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 open, flick, 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 close, flick, 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 open, flick, flick, close. And it was such a great way to like, I've got 12 minutes until this damn output comes out
and
to
you
tell me
gave
that I'm a failure, that I need to do it again.
Ominous menace at the same time.
Exactly. Andy, I still do that with my keys. I open and close butterfly knives with my keys.
Oh, and actually, I actually found you can buy butterfly knives are illegal. You should not own them. Also, as I learned when I was,
they're not
illegal in Pennsylvania.
And as I learned when I was 18, if you accidentally like hold it by the wrong end when you do the flicking maneuver, you can hurt yourself kind of badly.
But I'm missing a piece of my pinky.
Right. But they also make like training editions of these that you can actually buy on Amazon. There's just like it's a butterfly knife, but instead of like an actual like deadly shiv, it's actually just like a butter knife like in the middle of it. So it's like blunt on both sides. And so I bought one of those and like got my old moves back. But this is less likely to get me like arrested by. No, it's only a training knife.
The butterfly knife.
But let's just say, and this is like it's a really nice thing. It's only like $12. They also make it in like you'll call it rose gold. It's actually metal pink. And they also make it in like jet black. Oh, that's so cool. And also this is a really nice company because I bought like this and this in the same box. It came with you open the box and there's like a Tootsie Roll like placed delicately at the top of the box, and the hand not like a pre-printed and they sign your name, but an actual handwritten little note. Thanks, Andy, for buying this Vortex and the other thing too, and hope you like it. And they also threw in like the smaller size of this for free because I'd spent all of $25 at their shop. So definitely underscoring that this is an American company it seems like a mom and pop sort of shop. So in addition to great product, in addition to inexpensive, in addition to handmade, in addition to a great name, I feel like, okay, I've helped somebody buy coffee and a muffin or pay their electric bill this month. So like I said, I bought it just as a flutter, not knowing if I'd like it, but I find myself like just taking out of my pocket when I'm just, okay, time for another restart, and I'll just like be fiddling with this for really, really nice stuff.
Andy Ihnatko, your pick of the week. Thank you, sir. Andy is at the Chicago Sun-Times, where he was seen mumbling off in the background to this.
I know who took the strawberries.
Wait a minute.
A duplicate key was made.
Turn up my sound, if you will.
No.
You're ruining my joke.
But they encourage the crew to go around scoffing at me and spreading wild rumors about steaming in circles and then old Yellowstone.
Old Yellowstone. Thank you, Andy. Thanks also to our good friend Alex Lindsay. It's nice to see you again. Show up anytime. Love to see you.
I will much more often.
It's great to have you. Yeah, well, I forgot the election. Of course, you were very busy. What was I thinking?
Yeah, next week will be a little busy, but then after that,
you'll find Alex on the internet at pixelcore.com, but best to follow him on Twitter. That's where he'll announce anything amazing that he does, and he does it frequently, at Alex, Lindsay. And also, if you look at the Pixel Core channel on YouTube, we just did a Final Cut user group yesterday, and it was, and I will say, I think it's one of our best. So definitely, if you want to get all the geeky stuff about the new Final Cut Pro release from last week, the best and brightest, we're talking about it last night. So check it out. Yeah, that's the place to go. Absolutely. Yeah, I wish we could have done more on that here, but as you can see, we had many other things to discuss. We appreciate your visit, as always, Rene Ritchie from imore.com. And are you going to head back on the road and go somewhere else now, or are you going to stay home for a little bit?
Quite possibly. I might.
Oh, man. It's never ending. You travel more than anybody. It's amazing. Thank you, Rene. Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Don't forget, it's a great podcast. If you go to imore.com, click the hamburger on the left and select podcasts. You'll see some great stuff, including his new Apple Talk podcast, which is really, really good. Adam Engst, of course, is the publisher and editor-in-chief of tidbits.com. And those great Take Control books. You got a new one coming up, I'm sure. Tell us about it.
Oh, nonstop. Actually, our next one coming up this week is a revision of our Devon Think book.
I love Devon Think. Is that still around?
Oh, it's going strong, and just keeping up with them is crazy. But we've been focusing mostly on the obvious stuff, iOS 10, Sierra, iCloud, Photos, lots of books about that at takecontrolbooks.com.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you, everybody. We do MacBreak Weekly every Tuesday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1800 UTC. I hope you'll stop by, watch live, be in the chat room at irc.twit.tv. If you cannot, don't worry. On-demand audio and video is always available at our website for everything we do, twit.tv/MBW for MacBreak Weekly, MBW. But you could also get it at iTunes or wherever you subscribe to finer podcasts. And do subscribe, because you don't want to miss an episode. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time. Now back to work, my friend, because break time is over.